world is a book, and those who do not travel read only one page. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. We want to open today's discussion with the humble request from all those who are watching us from overseas. Sri Lanka, visit us, experience the Sri Lankan hospitality, and then you will realize there is no land like other than Sri Lanka. It's important to visit Sri Lanka, understand Sri Lanka, and then be with Sri Lankans as we unfold our hospitality towards you. So for those who are watching us from overseas, if you've not visited Sri Lanka yet, this is your opportunity. So tonight, our topic of discussion is rethinking Sri Lankan tourism. Joining us this evening on the show to discuss all this and more, we've invited 6 guests to our studios, including a lady who will talk about how we need to look at Sri Lankan tourism. So joining us this evening on the show are Chandra Wickramasinghe, veteran hotelier; Hareen Fernando, Minister of Tourism; Mr. Prasad Jayasuriya, Director Tourism Planning, Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority; Chanel Rodrigo, Sri Lanka Tourism YouTube Ambassador, also a travel blogger; Shehan Tahir, content creator, as well as Dilip Mudadenia, Senior Vice President of John Keel's Leisure. To pose questions from our panelists, onto my immediate left is Disal Kapuge. So Disal is with all ammunition ready to pose questions from our panelists. So if you want to join in with the conversation, you can do so by SMSing on the number 076 656 5353. The number once again, 076 656 5353. So let's get the ball rolling today with Chandra Wickramasinghe, veteran hotelier. What are your thoughts on rethinking or reimagining Sri Lankan tourism?
Well, first of all, if you see the Sri Lankan evolution of Sri Lankan tourism, 1960s, 70s up to 83 was for me, it's the golden era of tourism. So, and Sri Lanka was sold at a very high price, even more than the Maldives. And after 83, it has gone down with the social disturbance we had here and the terrorism issues. Then it continued, in spite of that, it continued well. And again up to Southern insurrection, 89, 90, 91. So what happened to tourism is there was for 30 years of war. Then the war is over, 2010 to 2018. That was the honeymoon era of Sri Lanka tourism. Because everybody invested into tourism and it did quite well until the Easter Sunday bomb attack. So now what's happening now is then COVID came in. Now the pattern of travel is being changed, totally changed, and people are looking for different kind of destinations, full of experiences, free individual travels. They don't want to go with big groups. So the traveling style or the trend of travel is being changed now. So this is why we think of to rethinking tourism. There are no big charters coming now, and we are very, except certain markets. Certain markets are still based on mass tourism. So I think Sri Lanka should go in my path of my thinking of we should go with our biodiversity and go with our sort of nature-based tourism, where Sri Lanka is one of the biggest hotspots of biodiversity in Asia. If you take flowering trees, amphibians, or birds, or mammals, or reptiles, we are top on the list. So still we are there, but our biodiversity is at a huge risk. So we need to correct these issues. What are the risks for biodiversity? I think pollutants, especially polythene and plastic pollution into Sri Lanka, and a lot of guests are very unhappy about it. It's about 40 million bags of polythene is released by the supermarkets to Sri Lanka, and these are not reusable bags. So these are the threats to go with biodiversity or nature-based tourism. And even our our seas, our oceans also is having huge issues. If you like to see PET bottles, you see thousands and thousands of bottles. I think tourism can't go without a clear and cut environmental policy. And these are not government problems. Who are the polluters are all private sector people. So we have to think of how to address this. And first we have to think of ourselves, whether we are polluting the environment and developing tourism. These two will not go, like terrorism and tourism will not go. Pollution and tourism also will go along. So one have to understand who is polluting, take the measures to stop this type of, at least reduce the pollution. So it is very important. Then even the waste management, these are the topics that tourists are talking at the moment. Waste management is also about 10,000 metric tons. And we are collecting only 3,400 metric tons. So all balance is going to the nature. And everything is site polluted, what do you call, all our waterways. We have 106 rivers and 30,000 lakes. All these things are at a risk. Even the seawater is polluted. So we need to think new thinking of tourism with the control of course, it's not the government, it's ourselves who are in the business must take this and lead it.
Right. Thank you very much, Chandra Wickramasinghe, veteran hotelier. Chandra, this probably is it's a very good opportunity for you to pose your concerns, issues to the minister in charge himself, who's here today, and we could have a good concrete dialogue on how we should take Sri Lanka tourism to the next level. So I now move my attention towards Prasad Jayasuriya, Director Tourism Planning, Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority. Prasad, what is your view on the topic tonight?
Yeah, thank you. I think let me start from where Chandra stopped. I think if you look at the year 2009, where we saw the end of the war, we had about 450,000 tourists in the country, and over the next 9 years, by 2018, it went up to 2.3 million. So that is where there was a lot of demand, and there were a lot of people who came into the industry to meet that demand with a lot of accommodation sector facilities. But I think that is where, to a great extent, that as the regulatory body from Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority's point of view, the so-called informal sector created. Now, if you look at the number of rooms available in the country today, we have about 50,000 rooms which are registered with SLTDA, partnered with SLTDA, and we have about another 30 to 35,000 who are not partnered with SLTDA. So when it comes to quality tourism, when we are talking about maintaining standards of tourism, that can create problems. But of course, they have given the industry the much needed room facilities when the demand was there. But I think if you look at the three disasters we went through, starting from Easter Sunday attack to the COVID and then to the so-called economic crisis, that gave us some kind of a breathing space to look back at the industry and to see what things we must do differently. And that is where I think today's topic, rethinking tourism, is very handy, because I think, as Chandra said, the COVID, which got the entire tourism global industry into a halt in a matter of few months, has given us an opportunity to rethink, and the tourism entirely, the patterns, the tourists that have traveled have changed. Now, if you look back at the 2018 numbers, out of the 2.3 million tourists, probably 30 to 35% of them were repeat travelers. But I don't know, with the current scenario that globally other countries are also going through, whether we can get the same travelers to come back to the country again. So I think it's important that we look for new market segments, and identify correctly what are these segments looking for. So I think we are a country blessed with a lot of natural resources. I mean, you can name so many things that most of the other countries who are doing well in the industry are not having. We can boast of the ancient kingdoms, cities. Arguably, the Angampara is the world's most oldest martial arts systems. We can talk about the first hospital in Mihintale. All these are there, but with all these resources, I think we are still an average player in the global tourism market. We should get into the next level. To go there, I think we need to concentrate on three things if you're looking at rethinking tourism. Of course, we shouldn't, there's no need for us to look at and copy countries like Singapore, where they have only very limited natural resources, where they use high tech to give an experience. But we should use technology, knowing that today's generation is not the travelers we used to have in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. So we need to bring in technology, but at the right level for the right purpose. Secondly, we have a lot of lesser known attractions, but we need to develop products through that, experiences through that, using innovativeness, creativity, and bringing in all that to develop. We shouldn't be in a hurry, but at least we should come up with world standard products. And thirdly, looking at the global warming, climate changes, over tourism, all these problems, as Chandra said, it is right time we look at clean, green, and responsible tourism.
So, Prasad, if I may interject there. An individual in the caliber of Chandra could speak about these programs that need to be implemented. But I would like to ask you, because you are sitting here today as a chairman of a government entity, director of a government entity like the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority. So my question to you would be, what have you done, or what have you all done in order to bring all these aspects that you spoke about, biodiversity, you spoke about climate change, all that, you spoke about technology. What have you all done?
We can't do it overnight. We need to work for a period of time, creating awareness, building right products, working with the right partners. So what we have done, if you talk about sustainability and responsible tourism, Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority, with the assistance of UNDP, we have now created a sustainable tourism unit, which is working right now, concentrating on developing the first sustainable destination in Sigiriya. So it's not an easy job because there are a lot of stakeholders.
Okay. So we'll get back to you also, Prasad, momentarily as we go along. Before I come to Chanel, Shehan, and then the minister himself, I want to pick Dilip's brain on our topic tonight. Dilip is the Vice President, Senior Vice President of John Keel's Leisure. Your time starts now.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I'd like to give a different perspective into this. So why we are discussing today is about reimagining tourism. The question is, why do we have to reimagine if it has already been imagined? If you look at it in 1980, we all mentioned about the arrivals. Sri Lanka had 316,000 arrivals, 1980. So in that year, Maldives had 50,000. And Vietnam had only 500,000 tourists. Thailand had 1.8 million. And Bali had just 50,000 tourists. And Hawaii had 3.9 million. That's in 1980. So I'm coming to a perspective in terms of establishing a gap before we address anything that we had to do in the future. So then if you look at, so let's give an excuse because we had a 30-year-old war. And during that war, it's very difficult for any country to tourism to survive. But in Sri Lanka, actually, thanks to many who have invested, during that time, the tourism has survived. So that's, I think, hats off to everyone who was involved in tourism during that time. In 2010, when the end of the war, we had 766,000 for Sri Lanka, 766. Maldives had almost 800,000, Vietnam 5 million, Thailand 15 million, Mauritius almost 1 million, Bali 2.4, and Hawaii 7 million. Let's look at 8 years later. Why I say 8 years? Because that's the year that 2019 we had the East attack. So Sri Lanka has got just less than almost 6% growth from 766,000 to 2.2 million. Maldives have gone to 1.5 with a high yield. Vietnam from 5 million gone to 15 million. And Thailand has gone from 15 million to 38 million. Mauritius 956 to 1.4. Bali has gone from 2.4 to 6 million. And Hawaii has gone from 7 to 9 million. So this is the kind of a gap that we can think of. And which basically the reason is that due to many reasons, we have not been able to capture the potential that Sri Lanka can have or could have had during that time. So that's the point number one. We need to understand first why it had happened in that manner when the war ended, when the environment is so conducive as a new destination, we will not be able to do it. If you look at island destinations, if you look at there's something called in tourism, we call it density, tourism density. So if you look at Sri Lanka, we have 65,610 square kilometers. So in the best year in 2018, we had 2.2 million. So which means tourism density is around 33. Per square kilometer, you get 33 tourists in a given time. If you look at Bali, which is about 5,700 square kilometers with 6.1 million, the density is 1,055. And if you look at Hawaii, with 28,000 square kilometers, it's 351. Mauritius is 701. Seychelles is about 200. The reason is I'm not comparing it. I'm comparing island destinations to understand what is the capacity that Sri Lanka can have. So according to this, even if you go to 8 million tourists, our density is around 100 per square kilometer. So therefore, there is enough room for us to improve and move forward. So that's the first element is that we don't have that particular opportunity had not been properly established during that time.
So Dilip, if I may interrupt you, when you say opportunities have not been created, are you pointing the finger at someone?
I mean, it's difficult to point fingers. I will come back to that. The reasons for would have really happened. So it happened basically for two reasons. One is the product innovation from side. So the product had, when was the last time that we added something for the tourism? It was the elephant orphanage in 1970s. There isn't any man-made tourism that has come in apart from some hotels. Of course, there's flying Ravana and so on, but there isn't anything that has come to the tourism. So it's the natural and the ancient man-made attractions that are driving the force of Sri Lanka tourism and the
So Dilip, I want to get some direction because the minister is also here. We can probably pose these questions to the minister himself. But I'm not trying to hold a candle to Harin in any way, but I'm just trying to understand. Last year was a bad year for Sri Lanka. 2019 was a bad year. We were picking up pace. Now, if you look at it, the first 4 months, we have had 582,000 plus tourists arrivals to Sri Lanka at the moment. Isn't that something to be happy about?
No, certainly the tourism has now, there are signs of picking up after 4 years. And that's extremely a good thing. Tourism all comes in cycles. You have good 9-10 years, and there's something can happen, and then every country has gone through this. That's the nature of tourism that we need to understand. So the fact that tourism is coming back to Sri Lanka is by nature, by design, is a beautiful country. So people naturally come here. And what I'm saying is the organic growth versus induced growth are two different things. The growth that is recorded in the countries that I mentioned, organic plus induced. So how did they do that? There are two ways to do that. One is the robust, continuous destination campaign. That's number one. Number two, the product development that comes into place. So those two areas have impacted the country's ability to really realize the true potential as a tourism destination. Right. So in order to move forward, in your reimagining, it's very important that we need to understand the root causes of these two reasons, which I will explain in the second round,
Sure.
one by one, what has contributed to this. Absolutely. And how we can
we'll talk about all that, and the need to have an enabling policy as far as tourism is also concerned. So thank you very much, Dilip Mudadania, Senior Vice President of John Keel's Leisure. Again, before I come to the minister yet, I want to give the minister the final opportunity, the final baton in the first round to respond to the problems that are being brought forward by the other panelists as well, and then give his own remarks about our topic tonight. So Chanel Rodrigo is Sri Lanka Tourism YouTube Ambassador as well as a travel blogger. Chanel, how do you view Sri Lankan tourism at this moment of time?
So I think perspective is stemming entirely from our time on the ground traveling, which we have been doing for the past 5 years?
5 years, yeah.
5 years. And I think when it comes to rethinking tourism, this is actually a bit controversial to say, but I would say maybe COVID might have been a blessing in disguise for Sri Lanka, because the pace that we were growing at, it was not sustainable. And if we had continued, well, we would have not been prepared to handle the amount of people that were going to come in. And the future that I saw at that time was us ending up looking like Bali, which is actually not desirable at all. If you look at Bali now, the environment is almost completely ruined. I mean, you'll see beautiful videos, but when you actually go there, there's garbage on the side of the road. Their water system is completely polluted, and that's because they're a small island. So we share some similarities between, we are a bigger island, but our nature and everything has a bit more of a similarity. So we can learn from that and understand that from what we have spoken to tourists and travelers on the ground, the thing that entices people and attracts them to come to Sri Lanka is the nature. So by default, a blessing that we have is our greatest attraction is already there and gifted to us. So I think our only job not only, but one of the main jobs is to preserve it while developing tourism. So developing tourism doesn't really mean that we have to lose the environment. If we understand how important the environment is and our nature is, like Chanda said, by protecting our oceans, by protecting our nature and our wildlife, we're actually creating this pristine, lush environment that is diminishing all around the world. Because of industrialization and countries growing, people will pay extra over time to visit a country that has been preserved in its most natural state. And I think recently we visited this property called Ulpota, and you'd be surprised how much people, foreigners, are willing to pay to go and stay here for 2 weeks just to live in mud huts without any electricity and walk barefoot all around the island and bathe in a freshwater tank. Right? That's what people want to pay and come for, not a piece of dirt inside, pure, pristine Sri Lankan nature. And I think if we don't understand this very quickly and also share it with the stakeholders at every level, especially like the far-reaching ones, it is so important to educate them that this is our biggest asset. And then moving forward from there would probably be, in my opinion, the best way forward.
Chanel, you all came into the scene in 2019, I think, which was probably one of the most difficult times as far as tourism is concerned. And you all went overseas, came back to Sri Lanka, did a couple of videos, and then you all became a hit. How important is it for those who are watching us tonight from overseas? Give them a message. I don't want to wait until the last minute, but I just want to ask you, if you are to give a message to them to come and visit Sri Lanka, what would that message be?
This is to not just Sri Lankans abroad, anybody.
Anyone.
Honestly, I would say things change really fast. So my secret advice to any friends who want to travel here is always come now. Because you don't know what Sri Lanka is going to look like in 10 years. It's very, in my opinion, volatile. And it's very at a critical stage we are at now. And if we don't tackle the direction that we go in carefully, it could go really badly. We could lose a lot of the wonders that we have, I think, in my personal opinion. So I always tell people, come now.
Come now.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chanel Rodrigo, Sri Lanka Tourism YouTube Ambassador as well as travel blogger. I now move attention towards Shehan Tahir, content creator. Shen, what are your thoughts on this topic tonight, rethinking Sri Lankan tourism?
Yes, definitely. First of all, thank you so much for having us. I think the fact that having creators such as ourselves also come to this table to be able to discuss is a very progressive step. Shows that we are actually thinking about all stakeholders right around. In terms of rethinking tourism, I echo the same thoughts as most of the other gentlemen here shared. But to talk more on what Chanel said, one thing we realized is, yes, what we have here is a gold mine. Not as far as even the pandemic, I would say, even because of the war. If you look at the other countries around the region, people don't talk about the North and the East. We have an untouched entire region that can be changed into whatever we want and created into any sort of thing we have. And at the same time, we've learned from what I would think are our mistakes on the South Coast. We let that sort of develop just at a rapid pace, not really thinking too much about the implications that would be. And we've seen how, those days it was Unawatuna, then Gaul, now it's going further down and down, and there's not much policy in towards how we're going to develop these regions. And what I think is that going forward, we still have half the country to develop in terms of a tourism product. And it is very important that we understand the mistakes we've made. And then from there, look at what is the most optimal way for us as a nation, considering, a lot of factors have changed just from last year to this year. The technological advancements in the world, the consumer is not going to be the same consumer we were looking for in the last 30, 40 years. The consumer of the next 10 years will most probably have a lot more disposable income, far less people of that, but there'll be more people who have disposable income and far more people who are looking for experiences, So we need to think about how are we positioning ourselves for that. We are a land that has experiences in every corner, and how we sort of look to promote that, look to nurture that, look to encourage more of our stakeholders to start looking at that model. Don't go out and just get a loan and go and build a bunch of rooms and put that on Airbnb. Instead, think of how you can cook a meal for a bunch of people, There are so many more things going on, and I think sadly what we saw was 2018-19 when we were going around, everyone was like, tourism is very good. I mortgage this and I'm setting this up because I'm expecting more tourists to come. And obviously our investment has been very high. Experiences don't necessarily require too much of an investment, you know. And that's what I think is the way forward. Really interested in finding out how we...
Of course, Shahan, don't worry. You have more time on the show tonight to express your views and bring your concerns out. I now move to the Minister himself, Harin Fernando, Minister of Tourism. A lot on your plate. You don't have to necessarily speak or respond to all the problems that was highlighted, but give us an opinion with regard to your approach to the topic at hand today.
Well, thank you for having me, Shahan. I do agree with most of these questions, but I do believe my job is more different to most of what was discussed, because my job 1 year ago was completely different to what was discussed right now. It is completely a different challenge that is in hand. The last tourist was leaving the country. Sri Lanka was no longer a destination to travel to, and it is a job to actually show Sri Lanka was back safe to travel to. So I'm still actually doing that, still trying to get the air seat capacity in. So I don't think whatever that is discussed is more relevant at this moment. Still, the negative publicity was far greater. The damage that was done was much far greater than that is discussed right now here. And it is still, the damage that was done is far greater than anyone that is discussed right now. So I think damage control is still to be done. And when I still travel and trying to convince, that's more great. And I think Chandra will agree with me, who has been traveling with us, trying to go for the road shows, trying to go convince people to come into Sri Lanka is quite tough, and both are being top hoteliers and travel companies quite understand the seriousness of this particular job. Trying to keep the hotels running, trying to keep the industry running is much tougher at the moment, because they've been going through problem after problem and trying to service the loans and trying to get these companies running and keeping it afloat. That have been quite a challenge, quite a huge risk, and to keep the investment going. So I would say that was the greatest task that was in hand. So I think I would say having 100,000 or more tourists continuously the last 4 months, and now having a small dip, being the off season, was to an extent a success. But looking at new markets like that was discussed, and having good feedback, having a lot of positive feedback, having inquiries into the off season, looks quite positive so far. So I think working with the industry, making the facilitation, which is what the government should be doing, not engaging in business, is what Sri Lanka tourism should be doing. Not engaging in business, not looking at businesses, not trying to do businesses, but doing the facilitation part. And I think that's what we are concentrating, doing at new market research to do how to engage in new markets and new ways of engaging in businesses, into digital marketing, which we really are looking at. I mean, currently, if you look at I mean, I don't know whether Chandra will agree with me, but the FIT market is really picking up. I mean, people are now not in the traditional way. I mean, it differs now. If you look at China, Chinese market would really want people be responsible in their travel. But whereas the European markets will differ, but they would like to venture into the younger generation is different. But the older generation would want somebody responsible for their travel. So you need to look at different ways of marketing. So I think we have got a bit of a younger set of people who are managing our tourism sector, and they're doing quite a good job, I feel. So right now I think we are getting the whole role together, and I'm quite happy with the progress so far. So,
Harin, I won't let you not ask the questions that was brought forward by Dilip as well as Chandra. Very good concerns, as well as Chanel and Shehan as well. But I want to get some direction as to what the future of tourism, the ministry is concerned, because I recollect a few months ago you went and said this is the best place to come, because if you look at even the dollar against the Sri Lankan rupee, anyone could come and invest, and they can walk about, they can enjoy Sri Lankan hospitality. Why? Because everything was cheap. Now the situation isn't on that. Now that cannot be the tagline that has been used anymore, because the Sri Lankan rupee against the US dollar has steadily appreciated over the last few weeks. 297 against 370, 375. It was around nearly 85 to 100 rupees difference at that time, and now things have changed. But what would the tagline be now? Because a lot of people say
I would still say it's affordable luxury. I would still say it's affordable luxury. If you really look at the other countries, if you go to Maldives, it's a bad topic. I've shot myself once. I've again shot myself once. So, but again, I would say it's if you look at countries, Sri Lanka is still cheap. For an Indian person, it's about almost 5 rupees or 4 rupees. So you can still spend Indian rupees in Sri Lanka. And when you look Sri Lanka, again, the tagline should be affordable luxury. But like Dilip said, Sri Lanka still have not gone to their potential. We need air travel. Have we really scheduled our flights? We boast about saying we have 9 domestic airports, but do we really use our airports? We have some aircrafts, but do we schedule our aircrafts on scheduled flights? So we need really to look at domestic airlines who are having their aircrafts but not using scheduled flights. So we've been speaking to the president about it. We need to use those aircrafts to be scheduled.
Yeah. So
or else we need to get other operators to use these airports to use it.
So Harin, you say that Sri Lanka is an affordable destination. My day job entails me to travel a lot. So I visited around 35 to 37 countries so far. And recently I visited Malaysia. And if you look at the price of a luxury hotel in Malaysia is not more than $120.
Correct.
And look at a 5-star hotel in Sri Lanka. Dilip could probably speak about it. It's going at around 180 to 225 US dollars. So is that affordable luxury that you're talking about? It's a bit contrasting, isn't it? If you look at the numbers and if you look at the prices itself.
See, that's why I think I saw, what's his name, Mr. Chansi Kumar has made a statement. There are certain hotels who really sell it very low. In Colombo, some go at $50. I can't mention names. As a Minister of Tourism, it's completely out of my league to mention names of hotels, but there are certain hotels really underprice it. There should be, I've spoken about this with the President, even in the Cabinet, whether we should really fix a price. We might really have to do it in coming times, because we'll have to fix it, because there are certain hotels calling themselves 5 stars, but they really are undervalued. And we will have to come.
I see Dilip raising an eyebrow already. So I want to open the.
I don't want to have this discussion here.
I want to open the floor.
It's a matter that I'm going to raise up with the industry very soon.
Right. Because we know what's happening, we can preempt it and we can discuss about it. Fortunately.
See, again, the problem is that there are certain hotels who have bigger room numbers, and certain hotels who does not have the room numbers. So again, it bottles down to season, off season, who has more rooms to sell, who has the capacity. I don't think that's something that we should be discussing here, but then it's a certain, I think again the planning of SLTDA who has to come bring in about the policy. It's about policy again. So it's, again, my job has to be making sure tourists keep coming in, air seat capacity increasing, more tourists, the industry needs to come in with policy. I need to facilitate, make sure more tourists come in, industry, people have more money to spend, and that's my job. So make sure that happens. And you all help me. And the country, again, this country, the islanders need to understand the value of tourism. That's something that I think you and me can help. I think that's where we are going wrong, and Chanel and you can actually help me on that, because Sri Lankans still don't understand the value of tourism. See, when we see a tourist, we really try to rip them off. That's where we need to come in. That's where we need to help. People need to really realize, tuk-tuk drivers especially, we need to understand the value of a tourist. We need to not really rip them off. I mean, we see quite a lot of problems the last couple of months that we saw people being ripping people off. There were a lot of rape issues. There were a lot of LGBT issues that we saw. Even yesterday, there was a huge complaint in Goa we got. And these are things that I think, as a country, we need to change. Those are things I think I can champion.
Right. So let's open the floor for questions. But Disal, with your permission, I'm going to ask the first question from Dilip. Dilip, the minister says that his intention is to increase the number of tourism arrivals in the country, and he speaks about affordable luxury. Is this something that positions well with the hotel industry, like even you're coming from a conglomerate? Is that something that sits well with individuals or organizations like yours?
Yeah, so I'll answer this in question this way. The answer for most of these things increase in the number of arrivals. People can question whether it's the number or the quantity or the quality. Either way, the numbers have to increase. Currently, let's say we have, Prasad said about 60,000. Let's say most of the rooms are closed now. 30,000 rooms, 1.4 million arrivals. That translates only about 30% occupancy. So when you're traveling, when you're bleeding with 30% occupancy, it's obvious that people get into price war. Any country, any product, doesn't matter tourism, any product or services, when the demand comes down, people add price for except certain luxury brands. So that's the nature of marketing that you can't avoid. So what the answer for that is to make sustainable growth and arrival. So what do we have to do for that? There are a few things that we would like basically to see certain elements in place. The first one is the consistency in policy that needs to be done. So once we have seen plans and plans, all of us have been sitting around the table for a long period. I think if you create, it will be like this pile of plans that have been there. So last so many 10, 15 years, when the ministers change or the governments change or the chairmen change or the boards change, you keep on changing plans and this let's do a new plan. The implementation of that has not happened. And if you really implement these things would have been much different ground. And that's what we see. The countries that I mentioned earlier who are doing effective tourism, marketing and product development like New Zealand, Australia, those are benchmark. And Hawaii, I don't take Bali for a reason that mentioned, but Hawaii is a very good example of sustainability, etc. coming. So there are best practices in tourism. So we need to ensure that those consistency in policy. Second thing is enabling organization. Any organization needs to be capable enough to implement and execute. So we know there are so many problems that have been faced when it comes to the execution, the government procedure, the issue with the manpower, competency of the staff, all these things are matters. It's not all you can't pinpoint and say, okay, this is the government organization, you should do that. We all have to find a solution for that. And we need to have a robust organization which is capable of implementing the plans. Otherwise, whatever we discuss is not going to happen.
So, Chandra, do you also agree with the fact that Dilip points out plans have been put across, and if you speak about plans, the plans are going to be up to at least up to this much as far as whatever has happened over the last few years are concerned. Sure. Has there been plans and plans have not been implemented? Is that a problem?
It's not the implementation of plans. We didn't have any opportunity to go for a global promotion program because country is not in a good position. When there is a huge, this stability in the country, right? People going and putting this money into a global market, tourism market is not very wise. It will go down the drain. So I think
So putting money in a global tourism campaign will just...
No. At this situation, because we are not stabilized yet.
Right.
Right. After COVID,
Right.
Asia is recovered only 20%. 25%. So
Actually, at that particular point when we took over, there was a global campaign for about $58 million,
Yeah.
which I didn't want to put in. And there was a campaign that was planned.
Yeah.
And I pulled out because $58 million at the first year was...
We couldn't afford it at
We
that
couldn't
time.
afford, and that shouldn't have been ideal, I thought. We thought, first year we'll just try to stabilize ourselves. We initially thought, let's put ourselves into India, which was wise enough to do. And like Chandra, the senior veterans thought, which just we initiated to go for the Thai convention, which with the money we had, which was only about 160 million rupees.
that is spent here.
Spent here, not going in,
going out.
bringing all the Thai, the
Indian.
Indian travel agents into Sri Lanka. Because in India, there was a huge negative campaign saying Sri Lanka didn't have food, no electricity. Even still, when we go there, they keep asking us, is Sri Lanka open? Because when you go to India, even when you're at the airports, when whatever news that goes in about Sri Lanka, they start off with the Sri Lankan news is the people storming into the president's secretariat. That the news is not that, but they start off with people storming into the president's secretariat. So that's a negative news. Unfortunately or fortunately, or I don't know how to describe it, but that's how the Indian media describes Sri Lanka. So there's so much campaigning that we had to do by putting in road shows, etc. But seeing is believing. So we had to do trips. We had to bring in people. Cinnamon, a lot of the top companies. I'm not going to mention names. It will be unfair for the other people to be mentioning. But I'll mention Cinnamon since you all have got Dilip Pudentelia, the vice president, and then people like Chandra, different companies. JetWings, again, Space, I'll mention few names.
Yeah.
They've bought in companies, influencers, etc., programs, and just try to campaign, in their own capacity. As well as Sri Lanka Tourism have invited different bloggers, influencers, different programs. And so we also got around the Thai, one lady, she's the president, we got her down. And then we got the convention, we won the convention to be brought into Sri Lanka, they're coming in July. So that would be a huge boost. So all the top people will be here. The MICE convention was here, the expo in Sri Lanka. So we went into India. So we went into China. We were just trying to work.
Minister, on that point, I'd like to ask you now.
If you don't mind,
that's the two biggest companies, the countries at least.
I'll just go for a short commercial break and just want to come back because we have some logistical issues to be sorted out in a few minutes. So we're going for a short commercial break. Stay connected, stay with Face Nation. We will be right back.
එළඹෙන ඕනෑම මොහොතක් අලුත් දෙයක් කරන්න සුදුසුයි කියලා හිතන එක තමයි වඩාත්ම ධනාත්මක.
දැන් මූල්‍ය අරමුදලේ ගැන අපි සාකච්ඡා කරලා තියෙනවා. ප්‍රෝග්‍රෑම් එක ගැන, ඉසරස්ම ගැන. ඒගොල්ලෝ කියන්නේ මේකත් අවස්ථාවක්. ඒ කියන්නේ අපිට අලුත් ආරම්භයක් කරන්න.
අපි පසුගාමීව හිතන හැම මොහොතකම අපිට ඊළඟ අඩිය තියා ගැනීම ගැන ප්‍රශ්නයක් එනවා තමයි.
අර පරණ දේවල් පැත්තකට තියලා මේ පරණ ආකල්ප පැත්තකට තියලා අපිට වුණ වැරදි වලින් අපි ඉගෙන ගන්නත් ඕන. හැම එකමත් හදා බල ඉන්න බෑ. රටක් හැටියට හිතන්න ඕනේ. ඒතර අපිට එතනින් පටන් ගන්න අවස්ථාවක් තියෙනවා.
මිලින්ද සමග නියමාර්ථය ඉරිදා රාත්‍රී 10:30ට
ළමයින්ටත් අයිතිවාසිකම් තියෙනවා. ළමයි පාරට බැහැලා බෝඩ්ඩල්ලන් කෑගහුවේ නැති වුණාට.
ළමයින් අපයෝජනයෙන් වළක්වා ගැනීම, විශේෂයෙන් වළක්වා ගැනීම තුළ රටේ සම්පත් ඉතුරු වෙනවා කියන එකට වඩා වෙන්නේ ළමෙක් ඒ නරක අත්දැකීම විඳින එකෙන් වළක්වා ගැනීම.
දියුණු රාජ්‍යවල කරලා තියෙන පිළිවෙත් අපිටත් අපේ රටේ ඇති කරන්න පුළුවන්.
අපිට කලාව නිසා තමයි අනික් කෙනෙක්ගේ දුක අඳුරගන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ. ඒ කියන්නේ සහකම්පනය කියන හැඟීම දැනෙන්නේ. අනිකා සම්බන්ධ සංවේදීභාවය ඇතිවන්නේ. විටිමිට ඇහෙන ප්‍රවෘත්ති වලින් ඒ වගේම අපි දකින දේවල් වලින් නිරීක්ෂණය වෙන්නේ ළමයි ගොඩක් වෙලාවට මේ තර්කකාරී ලෝකයේත් එක්ක මේ කලාව සමග තියෙන බැඳීම සහ සාහිත්‍යයට යොමු වීම අඩු වෙලා තියෙනවා.
අපිට ඕනේ හොඳ දක්ෂ සේවකයෝ. නැත්තම් වහල්ලු නෙමේ මේ රට ගොඩනගන වෙලා ගොඩනගන්න තියෙන අවශ්‍යතාවය.
රට ගොඩනගන්න තියෙන අවසන් අවස්ථාව කියලා.
ඔව් එතකොට
කියන්නේ.
ඔව්.
ජාතික මෙහෙවර සතියේ දිනවල උදෑසන 10:00ට TV1 ඔස්සේ.
අතෑරියේ නෑ මම ගේ කාලේ ගමට හොඳටම ආසයි මම හැම සමානකට සැරයක් ගමට යනවා.
හෙළී මහා ගත්කරු මාටින් වික්‍රමසිංහ ශූරීන්ගේ 133 වන ජන්මදින සැමරුම වෙනුවෙන් නැගිටිමු ශ්‍රී ලංකා විශේෂ වැඩසටහන මැයි 29 වන සඳුදා උදෑසන 7ට කොග්ගල මලලගම පුංචි ඔපිසර ගෙදරදී.
Thousands of worshippers visit Sellakatharagama throughout the year. The Gammadda movement built a water purification system in Sellakatharagama for the worshippers and the villagers to have access to clean drinking water. Gammadda, for the people, by the people.
මට දැනෙන්නේ IMF එක අන්දලා වගේ.
කිසිම දවසක ඔය ඉලක්කම් ටික එකතුව හරියට එකතු වෙන්නේ නැහැ.
අසාධාරණ වැඩක් නෙමෙයි ඒක.
මේක වෙනසක් වෙයි කියලා බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන අමාරුයි. IMF එක වෙත ගෙනියපු කිසිම සැලැස්මක කිසිම ගණනය කිරීමක් ඇනාලිසිස් එකක් අපි දැක්කද?
තව අවුරුදු 5කින් අපි කොතනදීද?
මම ඒකට උත්තරයක් නොදී ඉන්නම් ගන්න.
බුද්ධිමය ප්‍රවේශයකට මාවත YouTube පිටුව subscribe කරන්න.
Home is here?
Yeah.
In Sri Lanka?
Yes.
You gonna give it a good fight?
Obviously, yes. I mean, like, it's sort of a cowardness if I leave the battle right now. All genders are normal.
Okay.
And if you think like a transgender is a third gender, so then what is the first gender?
Now, the real crisis point came when we found that we really had no dollars.
No dollars and no rupees either. We were just printing.
Our electricity will be more expensive if we make more mistakes.
I used to put all the blame on politicians, but I think it's a two-way street.
Politicians and the political bureau has an upper hand, and they are trying to do it as they want. And the professional seems to have less hand in it.
Newsline, Monday to Friday at 8:30 p.m. on TV1.
People generally find it very difficult to just keep up with life, especially given the current situation.
All these people are frustrated in some way.
Mental health still, in certain sections of society, tends to be a very taboo subject.
Psychology is completely alienated from our school syllabus.
And support systems to help other people take care of their mental health.
A psychiatrist or a psychologist or a counselor is not a familiar character.
The People's Platform every Monday and Friday at 7:30 p.m. on TV1.
ඇයි අපිට 17 වෙනි වතාවටත් IMF එක දිහා බලන් ඉන්න සිද්ධ වුනේ?
ඔක්කොම කොන්දේසි යට ගහලා හංගලා කොටසක් ගත්තට පස්සේ තමයි කොන්දේසි ටික එළියට දැම්මේ.
ඔබතුමියලා තෝරගෙන නැද්ද මෙන්න මේ වැනි ආකෘතියක් තමයි මේ රට ඉස්සරහට යන්න තියෙන්නේ කියලා?
මම දකින්නේ ලොකු වරදක් තමයි රට ගොඩ නැංවීම කියන කාරණාවේදී ලංකාවට ජාතික ප්‍රතිපත්තියක් නොමැති.
අතන දැන් ඒ ජේවිස් එකට තිබ්බයි කිව්වේ රැල්ල නැති වෙලාද?
දැන් අපිට කරන්න වෙන්නේ මැතිවරණයක් දෙන්නේ නැත්නම් මැතිවරණයක් අපිට ගන්න වෙනවා.
ඡන්දෙට ගියාට පස්සේ වැඩිපුරම ඡන්දේ දාන්න යන්නේ මේ අපේ කාන්තා ඡන්දදායිකාව.
සටන සඳුදා රාත්‍රී 9:30ට.
මේ රටට ආවා ආයෝජකයෝ. ඒ ආයෝජකනේ කවුද ගහලා එළවුවේ?
මහජනයා ඉන්නේ විදුලි බිල වැඩි කරලා බදු බර වැඩි වෙලා ජීවත් වෙන්න බැරි වෙලා පහත් අනාථ වෙලා.
ඔයාගේ බලයට වඩා ජනතා බලය විශාලයි.
අනේ තමුන්නාන්සලා තුන් කාලකට මේ ජනත්වමා කිව්ව දේ තේරෙන්නේ නැහනේ හලෝ.
ගහලා මරලා අපිව නිහඬ කරන්න කියලා ඒ නිහඬ කිරීම කරන්න බෑ.
ආණ්ඩු රිමෝට් එක අපේ අතේ යාගෙන කියලා කියපු අය හිටියේ. ඒ අයම තමයි අපිට බලයට එන්නට උදව් කළේ.
කොටස් වෙළඳ පොලේ කියන කොටස් වෙළඳ පොල කඩාවැටෙනවා කියලා. කඩාවැටුවොත් මම ඒක වහන්න.
ෆයිනල් කාඩ් සතියේ දිනවල සවස 6:30ට.
Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. I want to give an opportunity to Disal to pose a question, but Disal, 1 minute if you don't mind, please. Dilip, do you agree with Minister Harin Fernando when he says that right now the priority is to increase the numbers? Right now, what he has to focus is about the fact that go for road shows, attract tourist arrivals, and he says that the ministry itself has done a lot of work in terms of tourism, and he says that last year was a tough year, and then he says that there is a significant improvement this year as well. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I need 4 minutes on this.
Yeah.
So I think, fully agree with the Honourable Minister. A lot of work has been going on, so we fully support you. There's a constant dialogue between the private and public sector, which should be the case, and things are, getting implemented. My point is beside that. My point is that Chandra says, looking at recently 2019, my first point is that 2010 to 2018, we had a clean 8 years, whether we have done enough, and if you look at cumulative growth, it's a single-digit growth that we have got, and that number cannot be denied compared to the other destinations. So we have not enhanced the best during that time. So the reason for that I mentioned, 3-4 reasons that I mentioned: the continuity of policies, the importance of the robust organization which has the ability to implement the plans. There are several plans around it, and also with regards to certain other marketing strategies. The first thing is important is destination marketing strategy. It's a science. It's not just come and say, okay, we'll put few things and road shows, etc. There has to be a consistency of it. The destinations who have continuously implemented destination marketing strategies have seen less impact in terms of volatility. Destinations who haven't invested in the destination a lot has a severe impact when there are things happening. That's why, for example, countries like Thailand, they bounce back very quickly. Even if there's a bomb goes on tomorrow in New York, the chances of you not going to New York will be very less. Even if the same bomb happening in Pakistan or even in Colombo, the impact is much larger. The reason is the positive equity on the destination is less in certain destinations because that has not been invested in communication, etc. In certain destinations, the destination equity is higher, and as a result, they get a higher margin. For example, in order to convert a tourist, a destination like Thailand, what they have to invest is around $7 to $8 per person conversion. New destinations will have to go to $50, $60, maybe $100 in that continuous planning. So what we wanted is...
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah, no, I'm
I would disagree with you, but I'm just a bit surprised why you say that, because I don't think I was a part of this, but you were actually a part of all the period in that industry.
You were leading.
You were leading it.
Leading all
not after 2010.
No,
even after 2010.
Not a complaint. I would like to say, Matang, because I talk to you all the time. And on these kind of things, see, when you wanted to make that change, you were leading all of that.
No, what I'm saying is, I'm not pointing fingers to anybody.
No. So they are asking you a question, and you're saying about change because you were heading that at that point. You were one of the main controlling, and you had all the kind of authority to make those changes. So when that change didn't happen, somebody else might think that it is somebody else's fault for not doing it. So you need to also say, when you're explaining it, why it didn't happen. Because
no, that's what I mentioned.
It might be seen like somebody else didn't do it.
No, not that. My point was different.
This also explain where it went wrong, or what was the fault, or where it went wrong.
So 2010 I was not involved. Okay, correct that. 2010 I wasn't directly involved in it. So what I'm saying is that 10 to 20 period.
It might look political. That's it.
Yeah, certainly. No, not that. What I'm saying is, for whatever the reason, it can be. Tourism is always a public and private sector partnership.
No,
so always the case.
More corporate sector, more the corporate.
I was referring to the destination market.
So when you say destination marketing, now the minister is going through a rigorous campaign. We've see a lot of members of the Sri Lanka Tourism Board visiting
And
for road shows and all that.
Also Sri Lankan Airlines, because
Yeah, so is that a fruitful decision? That's what I'm asking you.
So the activities which it has to happen. All the activities that are happening, it has to happen.
So they're doing it now.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, in addition,
is it strategic?
Yeah. So it has to happen. There's
is
no
it
question.
strategic?
Yeah. So there is a plan that is happening. What I'm saying is, in addition to that, it is very important that we also go into the key markets and drive a consumer demand campaigns. So that, if you look at in terms of the campaigns, we have your activations like travel fairs, B2B campaigns. So there are 4 segments in tourism, right? The one is consumer. The other one is travel agents and tour operator. The other one is the journalist that comes in. And then, of course, the tour operator separately. So travel agent, tour operator, consumer, and the media. Those are the 4 different. So we need to target all 4 segments and have continuous campaigns go through 3-4 years. Otherwise, one-off campaigns, we're not going to help you. So that is what has been started. We are appreciative of all the efforts, but that needs to be supported and go in a bigger scale, provided that the country situation is better and we actually afford to do all these other campaigns coming in.
Prasad, when Dilip says about a strategic approach should be there, and he spoke very eloquently about New York, for an example, increasing brand equity. Why isn't it that the brand equity, when it comes to the term Sri Lanka, is not there? What are you all doing about that?
No, I think, as Minister rightly said, when we started last year, we were at 0 level, right? So we had to decide what should be our short-term, medium-term, and long-term plans. So immediate need was to ensure that the industry survives. So we went to the markets that we can attract with ease, and I think we concentrated on that, and also with minimum cost. Those are 2 key factors that were needed for the industry from country's point of view at that point. So I think even we went ahead and appointed Sanat Jaisur as ambassador, but he was doing it free of charge because he had a huge following in this region. And I think we got the results. Now, when we are looking at our recovery,
when you say results, let's put this into numbers.
Yes, when you look at our recovery rate of about 33%, Indian market has recovered by about 50%. And some other markets that we were campaigning, like Russia, Belarus, Israel, Iran, has exceeded more than 100%. So, I mean, I know we have not got the numbers.
Now Udanga Veeratunga, I saw him taking credit for these Russian arrivals.
Not exactly. I mean, obviously, credit should go to him. He's getting some tourists. But I think if you look at even Pasikuda side, there are a lot of Russian tourists right now.
Then again, as long as you get the air seat capacity, that's what we did. We spoke to the Russian authorities. I mean, as you know, Aeroflot got stopped because of those reasons. And then when we spoke with the Russian authorities and got it back going, it started to flow in. And I mean, if credit is due to someone for getting it back, I mean, credit is due, we need to be giving it to that person. I mean, he wants to go and take it extremely, let him have it. I mean, I never tried to stop it. He was blasting us. So.
But you're okay now.
I mean, I never spoke about it.
So, Chandra, in February, you say that hoteliers in Sri Lanka believe that the increased electricity tariff is suicidal, coming at a time when about 10 to 12 resort hotels in the SME sector are looking at closing operations as they continue to make losses. Promotions are the only way out. Now, you make this remark saying that electricity tariffs need to be reduced.
Yeah.
Now, we saw the Man Invest today. The Public Utilities Commission was voted out from his seat as the chairman of the Public Utilities Commission as well. I don't know whether it's good news or bad news for you, but there is no one who is going to be lobbying for the hotel sector anymore. What are your thoughts about electricity tariffs and the economic aspects?
No, we got a court order. And we won the court orders in favor of hoteliers. So I heard today there is a 40% reduction on electricity tariff. I think our issue is not the electricity traffic, what do you call it, tariff, the bank issues. You know, we can't do business with AWPR 20 plus. These are the, we worked with the banks up to last year now, before COVID, with single digit interest, 8%. 8-9%. This is the biggest hit that we have. For some companies, they have their connections and they get their what you call the capital infusions, but we don't have that.
Some are very lucky to get their debt completely wiped off. Kumar Welkama said that in Parliament.
Yeah, that's maybe that personal debt.
And on the previous note, Minister, I wanted to ask you, we were talking about markets. Now, identifying the correct markets for Sri Lanka is critical in developing our tourism. And recently, we see, even you visited China personally. Now, the general notion would be anyone would ask, why would anyone from China want to visit Sri Lanka? So, can you just explain to us, what is the rationale behind choosing these markets? Why do you go for specific?
If you really look at China would be an ideal destination. I mean, if you, it's a 5-hour flight. China, Sri Lanka, Chinese also has, if you look at it, it's a huge population. And you don't need much Chinese. 500,000 Chinese coming to Sri Lanka alone will solve our problem. 500,000 Chinese spending $5,000 is 2.5 billion. That's almost the IMF.
That is one of the main rationales behind.
For me, I'm looking at the numbers plus the amount that.
But is there a form of attraction to Sri Lanka?
Of course, there is quite a. If you look at it, I'm looking at 4 cities attracting them from, and 4 airlines. There are China Eastern, China Southern, and what's the other one? One more airline. So we've spoken with all of the 4 airlines, and all of the 4 have agreed to fly into Sri Lanka. Already 3 will be flying into Sri Lanka, plus Sri Lankan Airlines. 27 airlines for a week were flying into Sri Lanka in 2018. Currently 14 will be flying from July. So there's quite a good chance of them flying in within the next 3 months. And if Sri Lankan Airlines also fly to their full potential, we can get those numbers in. And again, when you look at it, the religious tourism part, the wellness tourism part, Chinese will have a very good chance, and adventure tourism, and also Chinese spend a lot. Casinos, that will have a good business. Their casino opening up again, that's a big casino that's coming up in Colombo.
2024.
Yeah, but then the potential is there because you build it up.
Now is the
and there was 287,000 tourists came in 2018. So end of this year, if we can get a place up to about 150,000 tourists from China, 2024 will be a year to have about 350,000 tourists. So you gradually build it up. So 2025, we can definitely go to a target of 2.5 million tourists. And right now, as they all said, we do not have the capacity and you can't overload Sri Lanka. So you have to gradually build it up. And also, there is some super news. Sri Lanka will be, recently to the cabinet, there was a proposal that was brought by a Malaysian company to have labs in Sri Lanka, which is a 6-week lab where any investor could come into Sri Lanka. There's going to be 3 labs that's going to be set up. That is one for agriculture, one for manufacturing, and one for tourism, where approvals will be granted within 6 weeks, which is one is going to be on tourism. So any investor, let's say it could be Shangri-La Hotels, or it could be Cinnamon Hotels, or Renaissance, which is Thema, they can give their proposals. In Sri Lanka, what happens when it comes to investment, there are so many places, there's so much of red tape, there's so many people for approval, which takes so long. One has to go to coast conservation, one has to go into wildlife. There is so much of approvals. This is where these guys, these companies apparently, chairmen are former finance ministers from Malaysia and Indonesia. They were fantastic. The presentations are amazing. These are companies who have done lobbying or facilitation for Ethiopia and other 26 countries, where they have really leapfrogged from amazing numbers, amazing job creation and investment. So Cabinet have given the nod for it, and there are going to be 3 labs that's going to be set up in Sri Lanka, and they will do only facilities.
Is there a timeline for this?
Yeah, it'll happen, and I'm sure now this will be a good talking topic for Sirasa and for Face the Nation. And to Face the Nation, I'm sure Shyam will be very interested to know more details.
I want to know, 6 weeks, isn't that a long time?
No, actually, it'll be not just the topic. So it'll actually 6 weeks is a long time, and I also thought about it, but.
We're talking about a 24 to 48 hour turnaround at the BOI.
It'll be it'll be also, even if the legal frame has to be changed, the AG will be there. President has to sign it off. The minister has to run it, and it'll be done.
Right. So Chanel, Minister Speaker. Yes.
Question on what you mentioned about the market. Adding to what Honourable Minister said, this is part of the basically a destination marketing strategy we call segmentation, targeting, and positioning. So when you segment the market, you have country-wise and you have your experience-wise. So one of the biggest issue in Sri Lanka is the season and off-season. So we have December to March or April, which is a more European-heavy, which is a traditional market. Then you have May, June off-season, and then of course shoulder comes in, and October, November. So therefore the market diversification is an important element in the tourism strategy, to that you have your bread and butter, which is European, and also to get the new markets like India, which they have issued 50 million passport in the last so many years, and then of course Russia, then Spain, Australia, New Zealand, China, as mentioned. Those markets have to be filled in. So once you have 250 to 300,000 tourists per month, then we are running almost 90%, 95% occupancy, because then the room factors are such. That's what we have experienced in 2018. So in December, 245,000 arrivals, which basically gave a large occupancy there. So that's the important element. Then the second one, which I mentioned, is the positioning of the destination. We ask, how are you going to sell our Sri Lanka? How are we going to differentiate ourselves? So we all agreed there's some time back in the industry, which we are continuing now. We call it Asia's authentic compact island. First of all, frame of reference, we are in Asia, because there's a trend towards going to Asia. The other one is an island. When you say island, a lot of people like to travel, right? The other one is the diversity of every 50 kilometers, something changes. The other one is an authenticity of the country. So we put all this together, it's not a tagline, Asia's diverse, compact, authentic island, which gives us the reason for people to travel, which differentiate from other people.
So, Prasad, is that something that is on the agenda of the SLTD?
Yeah, definitely.
We have agreed on that.
Planning is all going based on those.
So there is good dialogue on that. So I want to ask a question from Chanel. Now, Chanel, the minister spoke about adventurous tourism and how important that is. Now, given the fact that Sri Lanka is blessed with an ocean around it, lakes and streams to do many water sports, and also a land with diverse terrains favoring many adventure sports, do you think that Sri Lanka should really venture into adventure tourism as well in the near short term when it's looking at developing tourism in the country?
Absolutely. I think that's something that we have overlooked for a very long time. And we recently cycled around the island in 43 days just to show on our channels, at least, people that it is indeed safe. If a girl can cycle around Sri Lanka, then, it's
during
not unsafe. During an economic crisis.
All the problems in the world were saying we had all these issues.
Yes. So, absolutely. And I think it was during that time that we realized how much of an opportunity we have missed out in adventure tourism. And I think while we were on the trip, I had a few UK travelers who messaged me and said they're cyclists, that they've traveled South America for 15 months, and they didn't think it was possible to travel Sri Lanka, but after watching our stories, they decided to bring their bicycles and come. And I followed his journey, and he's had an amazing journey interacting with people on like a very close level. And the kind of places that they spend their money is completely different to a tour. You are spending money at like the rice shop on the roadside. You're buying something from a small corner shop.
Stop at a tire shop.
Yeah, and that is really just sending out that money further away from like where it usually goes. And it's something that's really important. But it's also like we have to understand that adventure tourists are not budget tourists. There are people, these bicycles that they take cost like into the millions, 5-6 million bucks, and they will stay at the best hotels on their way and in budget hotels, because these are people who want to experience the country.
If I could add into that, I think one other thing we need to also think about is, as a product, Sri Lanka tourism, what is it that Sri Lanka tourism wants to be seen as a product, right? In our opinion, we've traveled so much, and especially after that cycling trip, when people were telling us, are you crazy to cycle? You know, you might get robbed, all these things might happen. The one thing we realized was Sri Lanka's biggest product is our people, right? You don't need to train them at the hotel. I mean, yes, of course, at the hotels they need to be trained. But my point is that a guest's memory of Sri Lanka will be made by just a random guy on the side of the road who'd offer him a free thambili sometimes, who'd just talk to them and invite them over for a cup of tea.
It's a natural hospitality.
That natural hospitality is really the product. I mean, it's coupled by saying, oh, we have all these fancy things to also
But do you think that is the center stage when you speak about tourism in Sri Lanka? Is that the selling point?
I think it's one of the biggest.
I would think it is one of the biggest selling points.
I actually agree with these guys because, see, our smile, I always say, like just Muralidharan. I mean, balls, he takes a wicket, he smiles, gets smashed for a six, he smiles. Yeah. Just like Sanaj, we all smile. I mean, we lose, we smile. We win, we smile. You know, Sri Lankans at that hospitality, it's one of the greatest, I think, strengths we have as Sri Lankans. And if you really look at it, in COVID time, lots of tourists weren't able to go back, and Allah, for once. I mean, there's so many people who kept them back, and that warmth people keeps talking about, and I believe, whenever we go on these places in India, when we speak about it as countrymen, and we spoke about Sri Lanka, it came out even from us, honestly, about some passion. Every one of us who went on those tours spoke with that passion. And when Chandra bought those French girls, I mean, they saw it when they were running in their adventures, how the people from the estates were treating them. And when I went and met those girls, and they had so much love for Sri Lanka.
There's no question about the fact that we are all truly Sri Lankan ambassadors when we are staying in Sri Lanka.
Also, I just want to add on to one thing. Sri Lanka is a beautiful place when it looks. I don't think we realize we are surrounded by water. How many of us do water sports? How many of us on this table do water sports? How many of us do diving? I don't do it. I mean, to be honest, I'm ashamed. I mean, we don't do diving. I mean, I can swim actually. I mean, that's a rare thing. Many of us can't swim. No, I can swim. I not can swim. So I went to a good school, which has
right. On that point,
you speak about three-wheelers ripping off tourists. Now, we have a question from one of our viewers. The minister is talking about three-wheelers ripping off tourists, but the government is ripping off tourists with exorbitant rates at sites. For example, Botanical Gardens was raised to 3,000 rupees per head, effective July. Yeah. Is it really worth paying that much to visit a botanical garden?
Can I actually, I get this so often. Can you just divide it by 300 rupees? How much is it? $10. How much is it? I mean,
it's $8-9.
How much is it actually?
$10.
I think the answer for that is basically, as Honorable Minister said, the local rates are subsidized rates.
Yeah.
So the cost has been absorbed by the government. So therefore, when you go to some of these places, then even in other countries the rates are high. So therefore, the correct price has been imposed for the tourist. So,
see, again, what we do wrong is we tell the tourists, "Oh, they're ripping you off," but they bring the dollar. It's our own guides who do this. They say Tambiligediya, they go and say, "Oh, don't buy it in the hotel. That's a tourist rate," and they say, "No, buy it from the shop. They're ripping you off. Don't buy it here." And he'll cut the Tambiligediya, and they say again the whole concept. They're getting it wrong. So there is a base price.
So, Minister, I want to, with your permission, of course, I want to drag towards Dilip now. Dilip initially spoke about some good numbers.
Once again, Roshan. Again, it's about our currency depreciating.
Right.
See, when it was 167, it was okay. When it fell to 300, that's where the whole disparity happened. So there was a big difference. So people don't really understand, and it was not really increasing to a bad difference. And honestly, it is not the tourism ministry who did it also. Unfortunately, we are getting blamed. It was the wildlife, or it doesn't come under. Okay, botanical gardens come under us, I think.
Yeah, it comes
under us. Yeah. But the other places are not coming under us.
So 1979. Now Dilip brings up a very important point in his opening remarks, saying, since 1979 we've not had a tourist attraction.
Correct.
The last time we had a tourist attraction was in 1979. But
again, it is not our job to do
I will.
So I want to give an opportunity to Dilip. So let's take this conversation very constructively, Minister, for you also. Sometimes you get a little bit angry, but today don't get angry because today we are going to have a constructive dialogue. I remember that. Of course, I remember that. I thought you will walk out of the debate too. But I want to make this a very constructive dialogue. I want Dilip to get a little bit of cognizant to make us, when you say 1970, that's a long time. Yeah, Dilip, you were saying.
So the reason is that, as I mentioned, our tourism was stagnated from 1980 for various 30-year-old war, and the 381,000 did not reach up to the even 500,000.
And you bring in a lot of good numbers, Dilip.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us?
So basically,
so the minister will understand much.
So
more
basically, in that context, if you look at for a day, how many tourists that you have in the entire country, it's not even 10,000. And they are spread all around. So if commercially viable projects to be brought in, there are 4 A's in tourism. This is called attractions. It's basically not viable. So that's one of the reasons that did not happen. And from a private sector perspective, there are no large museums or any kind of aquariums that comes in, any other activities, etc. So people didn't see the commercial viability of investing because it was not the case, other than the hotels. So accommodation was there, accessibility was there, attractions was part of it, but the amenities and the man-made attractions did not come in. So that's one of the reasons. So it's a chicken and egg situation. So the numbers goes up to 2 to 3 to 4, 5, 6 million. You will see these things will come in. So that's why in some of the countries, for example, no, you will never agree or you wouldn't have believed that a country like Saudi Arabia will promote tourism. So $2 trillion will be invested and their project. And 500 billion is that project that King's son is going to do that. And they are now had 3 months back, they had a rave party, music tourism. Unbelievable how they have transformed
from what it was. So I recollect, Minister, in 2007, when I was a budding journalist at that time, I happened to interview the Minister of Tourism of Malaysia. That was the time that Malaysia launched its campaign, The Miracle of Asia. And look at where Malaysia is now, and look at where Sri Lanka is now. Malaysia was coming to Sri Lanka to promote Malaysian tourism. And look at where we are now. Why are we in this situation right now? Isn't it politicians who should be blamed? Or isn't it the bureaucrats who should be blamed?
The finance minister of Malaysia was giving us a speech recently in the cabinet, and he was telling us how they changed. He was actually saying how they launched the Miracle of Asia, and he was explaining to our officials how they did that, which is very good. Were you there, actually? They got all officials, the ministry secretariats, secretaries, chairmen, and he was explaining. It is not just easy, Shayan, as you say. It is the shopping. It is the duty-free shopping, to the concepts of transportation, to everything. It is not just... In Malaysia, it's the different product. Sri Lanka is a very different product. So we need to strategize everything. And Malaysia was truly Asia in a very different product they brought in. And why we went to Malaysia and how we really have to project Sri Lanka is in a very, very different two products. We are not, Chandra would ideally understand what I'm trying to talk about, because Sri Lanka is a leisure product.
I'm sure Dilip will
and
also
Dilip will also understand. And they're both veterans on the product. That's all my forte. I'm a politician. I would only be able to facilitate their understanding of how they will market Sri Lanka. I will only have to say what they will have to do as a politician. My job will be only to facilitate them. But I understand what that politician who told us, who gave us their story, because our products are very different. So I would not agree Malaysia did that and how Sri Lanka should be doing this.
1979 was the last time.
But yes, that's very different.
I have answered to Dilip's one, right? We are not going to compete with man-made new this thing in this country, or even the city tourism. What you all are trying to do is far way below what they have been doing, right? So it's very difficult to compete. And now you came out with a new subject called authentic biodiverse island. And so we have all the authentic diversity, biodiversity. We don't want many more. Maybe city tourism you might need. Yeah.
It's a product that they are talking about.
That city tourism we can't compete with. Bangkok, we can't compete with KL, we can't compete with Paris, we can't compete with even the Singapore and all those things. Why are you going? Because we have all natural products, which you said now, it's going to be diverse.
But isn't that...
It's totally contrary.
No, but isn't that the focus of a conglomerate like John?
That's up to them then. We can't put all our resources to support them.
Sri Lanka has 144 shipwrecks around Sri Lanka. 144 shipwrecks. We don't do diving. Again, I'll go to that subject, right? And now ADEX is launching Sri Lanka as a diving destination in October. We need to do beach volleyball. Just a thought. We're throwing it up. Beach volleyball destination. Things we can do. Right? So we are launching all of that. And there's a guy who did a swim from Tokyo to San Francisco. He's doing a swim around Sri Lanka just to launch Sri Lanka. So this is how Sri Lanka could be launched as an island destination. Yes, we need city tours. Port City will be launched. There will be duty-free shops coming in there. See, even China is a country which is quite expensive for branded shopping. They have a huge tax, right? Yeah. This is one of the reasons that they go to Macau and Hong Kong to shop, right? One of the reasons that they will come out to shop just for duty-free shopping, right? These are things that that's why they go to Malaysia, they go to Singapore to do their shopping. These are things that you will be doing.
On that point, Minister, I want to ask, and also from Mr. Chandra, now when you did the Raid Amazons event, now I was there myself, and I'm from Kandy, and I didn't know that Kandy had that much potential in terms of the adventure sports side, using inland water bodies and all. So what has held us back from figuring out this potential, from discovering these new tricks, these trials, things we can do?
These things are very good, but the bureaucracy. I know, you know how difficult for me to get the permission to go to that lake, and how difficult for me to get 5 drones, which we have to pay, right? So this is very difficult. I mean, we can't. I think we have to be very.
So are you saying it's not conducive to go launch into these new projects under the bureaucratic system?
It's very, very long process. You know, you can't. And if tourist board can give approval to everybody, fantastic. We can get it, right? There are so many red tapes, right?
So can the Ministry of Tourism actually intervene and discuss with other ministries?
Sri Lanka is a studio itself. Indians would just not go anywhere else. They would be shooting movies simply in Sri Lanka if there was no red tape here. Right? For them to shoot a movie, they have to go to million places, right? And that's why they're not shooting. Otherwise, entire Bollywood would be in Sri Lanka.
Minister, you are saying, now you are in the cabinet. When you say this...
We put a cabinet paper, still the paper is not approved. Right? From the first week that I've been in cabinet. So it's unfortunate. So these are things that we have actually spoken to the President. Honestly, President has really...
You are very good friends.
No.
We're good friends with the President. No.
You all don't like him? No, that's the whole problem. He has actually agreed to change that entire concept. Now, that's why I told you he got a company to really redo that whole thing. And I'm quite certain because he understands where the whole bureaucrats are getting involved. So I'm quite sure that he'll remove all the
red tapes. The introduction of the labs concept, do you think it could also
I think that's a way to get...
So in the future, are you saying that actually the red tape would be kind of like, reduced?
100%.
So
100%. Okay.
So Shenan has a question, but I just want to...
So that's a guarantee from you. Okay.
I want to come to Dilip now. Dilip, Chandra and the Minister says, innovation that you point out is not key right now because that's not what Sri Lanka should be known for because that is called city tourism. Do you have anything to say about that?
So innovation is not about building large bricks. You know what's the most visited monument in Europe? Eiffel Tower, right? What's the second largest visited place? In Belgium, we call Mankenpis. So look at the investment that has gone. One has gone millions of dollars. The other one is 2 cement bags. But what they have done is they have done a storytelling. So storytelling has brought in, content creation has come in, people have created curiosity. I'm not talking about huge building coming in. I'm talking about creating such content and giving that story for people to come and see that. There's a tree in Germany called Love Tree. There are 5 people full-time working there to answer the letters that are coming to the Love Tree. People who can't get married, they write and there's a matchmaking. Over 26,000 people have got married. If you go to Paris, one of the bridges, they change the cover almost every 2 months because the weight of the padlocks is too heavy. Because the people are going to, they say there's a bond. And that's a story that is created. Everyone knows it's not true. So I'm talking about that approach. It's not necessarily building large brick and mortar situation coming in, creating stories.
That's the very point.
So that's one.
That's a valid point for France, right?
No, I'm not talking about France.
No, just let me talk. We are talking about to implement your model or conglomerate model into Sri Lanka tourism model, which we don't agree.
No, I didn't mention that.
Would you also say that there are, rather than just the conglomerates, there are lots of stakeholders in Colombo also who are suffering from Colombo not being seen as a tourism
So just give me, after that you speak, that's one. Second thing, I'll give you more numbers. Where do we have got the highest number of rooms in the country? The highest number of rooms that are coming is Colombo, 3,500 classrooms. Whether you like it or not, these are the rooms that are coming to the market. So those rooms have to be filled. Second, the new markets that we are coming in India, etc., in this South Asia, they have a tendency of visiting called city tourism. All the major tourism destinations, when the city tourism is doing well, and every destination you can take it, the spillover goes to the other area. That doesn't mean that we don't have to do rural tourism. We have to. So it's a dual strategy that is required. One, off-season in Sri Lanka, because certain markets might be interested in the city-based activities, and Colombo itself, there are so many things to do it.
But then would you say that Colombo has the necessary infrastructure to support this?
Of course.
Of course, conference mice market, there is enough to do in Colombo.
And Colombo also has a very unique offering that you don't find elsewhere in Sri Lanka. You meet any tourists, like especially when we travel and we meet, they talk to us and they're in shock. They're like, how do you speak such good English? Their assumption is that all Sri Lankans are of the rural setting that they meet there, right? But they don't see the sophistication of Sri Lanka unless they come into Colombo. And
also, I think I would like to add that if you visit any country, you would always go to the capital city, Bangkok, Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam, because that's where you really get like the
so
that's one more thing.
I believe with the port city coming in, Colombo city will actually have a lot of attraction, and there were lots of investors looking at Port City very positively. So I believe Colombo City will also.
So there is one more point, last point, sir. That's Colombo. If you look at other places, Anuradhapur only 3% of the tourists goes there. Polonnaru only 11%. Sigiriya 28%.
But I would like to suggest one thing. Why don't you all start scheduling flights to all the cities?
When the demand is there, for sure we'll do that.
No, actually, if you start scheduling...
It was the case.
No, if you start scheduling, these places tourists will start doing it.
I recollect, again, I'm not talking on behalf of Dilip, but I know that they had scheduled flights.
Yes,
we'll start again. The demand is coming up now. So Kandy, Temple of Truth, etc., about another 28%. Elephant Orphanage, 27%. So these are the numbers.
I also believe one thing, Dilip, just because the conversation is there. See, one thing that we lack is domestic air transportation. See, for me, going into Badul is so, it's mind-boggling me to go 5 hours, sometimes for a meeting, which takes only half an hour, and coming back another 5 hours. The time consumption, even for a tourist, just going there for a day and takes 10 hours of their time, that does not work, and especially places like Polonnaru, right, which takes only 20 minutes or 30 minutes in air travel. Sri Lanka, if we are to go to a next level, and you all are the only ones who have that capacity, which has about 3 aircrafts, I think 3 or 4, right? 3 aircrafts. That is where this will be a huge game changer for Sri Lanka, because there's Trinco you can land, there is Polonnaru where you can land, Kandy where you can land, Anuradhapur where you can land, Batticaloa where you can land, right? That is where the game change will happen. And sooner or later, if we do not do that, these places will not survive.
Dilip and them would be very happy if there is no restriction on fuel also, no?
Yeah. And also,
I remember last year we had some tourists coming from Libya and Syria, and they want to go to Noor earlier. And unfortunately, Dilip, as the minister pointed out, we could not take them by air because there was no facilities at that time. And unfortunately, I had to have 6 barrels of fuel behind my Jeep and then take them to the destination. Now it's sorted. Now that's good news. Yeah. So there is some progressive steps that are being taken. So Chandra, you speak a little bit. You seem to be a bit angered about city tourism.
No, not anger. Yeah. You know what is the problem in Sri Lanka today?
No, I will tell you.
Economic inequality. Everything you are bringing into Western province.
No.
We have to focus for other destinations also. Same time.
Chandra,
like he said about Uber.
Yeah.
Uber province is the poorest points in the country, but tourism attractions are huge.
Chandra, I will tell you a classic example. Now, I told you before that I travel a lot. But I don't like to go, as Chanel pointed out before, to a mud house or stay in a place like that. I would like to. I would like to stay in a proper 5-star hotel where I can get the luxury, because when I go travel, I want to have that luxury. So that is where companies like Dilip's company comes into play, because they market that to the upmarket tourists, and that is why if you look at it, today the room prices are going at around $108. Certain hotels, hotel rooms in Sri Lanka is going at around $225 to $250. So isn't that also important in this equation? As Dilip says, there has to be city tourism as well as rural tourism. Has to complement
that depends
it.
for which market, right? So we handle a lot of European market. City is just a dinner stop, right? So you have to study the market. Who brings more clients, more money to the dollars to the country is probably the Europeans stay 10 to 15 days. Where the city tourism, one night. Your ROIs will be very difficult. I'm telling you now, right? It's very, very difficult. I mean, people will not come and stay 2-3 nights. They go for a casino, one night they go off, right? Or 2 nights.
But isn't it what we should be looking at changing, at least? I mean, if you're
No. I think you have to. Colombo Hotels has to give some sort of chance, right? If they build without any marketing plan, add in the rooms, every Mudalalis come and do the hotels, that is not problem of Sri Lanka tourism. First, they should have a marketing plan. They are adding 3,400 rooms. They don't know what market they are getting, how they are getting. They are getting bank loans. They are investing. But where are they going to get the business? And the minister came out with a very good strategy, because first time I hear that he went to see 4-5 airlines, which is the most important thing to the country.
And on that point, I want to ask actually, Mr. Prasad, now, one key thing when you develop tourism is you have to attract high spenders, tourists who spend a lot of money. And there was a constant grievance that the most tourists who come to Sri Lanka are backpackers or students who don't really spend as much as they should. And even the president brought it up a couple of months ago. So as the SLT, as the Tourism Development Authority, what are your plans to attract high spenders to Sri Lanka?
I think you're dead right, because when I started the discussion, I said we are still catering to the average, we are an average performer in the global tourism industry. So I think the government president has clearly indicated we need to attract high spending tourists. And to do that, we need to ask whether we have the necessary products, necessary capacity to do that. Now, I was talking about 50,000 rooms available, but I don't think more than 9,000 or 10,000 is there to attract high spending tourists. That's one side of it. And secondly, we need to have right products, right experiences, because tourism is not all about staying in a hotel. It's much more than that. And I think Chandra has done that. So from Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority's point of view, we are looking at a couple of developments. I mean, as we all agree, I mean, doing something different, something new in this country, you have to cross a lot of hurdles and barriers. It's not easy, right? You can't do it overnight. We just get closer, still something is holding us back. So,
but if you look at countries like Dubai, for an example, now, I happen to visit Dubai a couple of times, and I've seen the country. If you go to the city, there are a lot of man-made projects to look at. if you go to the Dubai
Yeah,
Mall,
see,
maybe
as I
maybe
said,
Future
I mean, a
Centre.
country which has not got many natural resources
They are going
will
for it.
depend on man-made resources.
Yeah.
That's
No,
exactly.
You have to have money
And
to build.
also just think about it this way. Average spender in Sri Lanka spends only $200 maximum. So
Right now,
we-
for the whole
right now.
That is doubtful, no?
Now it's about 100.
That is also doubtful.
No, 200 is
Dubai is
maximum,
526.
right? And Maldives is about $700, right? So I'm very careful in talking about Maldives. But,
Always in hot waters about the country, Minister.
but then again, what our target should be is about 400, which we are looking at even 2025. We need to have hot air ballooning. We only have 2 hot air balloons in Sri Lanka, 2 or 3, I think maximum of 2 or 3. And we don't have skydiving school in Sri Lanka, which we can easily have. Koggala Airport, we can easily use to have a hot air balloon. Sorry, a skydiving school, where it will be an ideal place to have one, right? So these are investors that we need to find. These are things that these
So
kind
where
of
should this come
companies-
from? Where should this
exactly?
innovation come
So
from?
this is what the ministry is starting. Again, I'm going back to where we started on our short-term goal was to make sure at least some tourists, some people are coming into the country first. So that is what we did the first year. 1 year ago at this particular time, Shreyant, we would not have been talking. Sorry, we were not talking about this. We were in a very, very difficult situation. You were with your barrels, where you're carrying the barrels and trying to take your guests into.
Agreed. There is no question about that.
So that was where we were. So we have actually, I mean, we could have never imagined we would have been here today discussing, and country had 500,000 tourists within 1 year.
So Minister, one of the allegations leveled at...
So what we are now trying to do is now trying to add the value, get the value additions. So I'm quite confident. I mean, even today I met with one of the top hoteliers, one of the top investors, where they want to do some good medical tourism, with some artificial intelligence, huge investors. So there are some investors showing lots of interest in Sri Lanka. So I'm sure in the next 6 months,
So there are allegations.
investors coming into Sri Lanka.
So there are allegations, Minister, saying that Russian tourists and individuals with Russian passports are taking away the revenue of Sri Lanka.
There is
That's
an
a
issue.
big problem.
There is a
Because
huge
Chanel
issue.
spoke about the fact that
There was a
how
huge
people are going to be
issue,
benefited.
But currently, it's actually coming down a little bit because Russian tourists have dropped seriously because of the off season. So we are trying to bring in some regulations through this LTDA. Myself and Tirana will be on the 31st in the south. With the entire DIGs, the police, the top police, and we are going to do a clear outing on the entire south.
It won't be a public gimmick, no, Minister. This time, it won't be a public gimmick alone. No, it will
No, I
be
shouldn't have
something
said this
concrete.
also now. Unfortunately, I shot it out again.
Yeah.
So we're going to do that.
Yeah, Shannon, yes.
So this is something I wanted to ask you from the beginning, because I think a couple of times I heard you say that certain questions posed to you it was not your job specifically, right?
Which one is this?
There were a couple.
There was a few, I can remind you.
Yes.
You asked the question.
Yes, anyways.
Don't worry, Minister.
This is just, honestly, this is just from my understanding, so just explain it to me. All of the things that we're discussing is great. We're talking about how to bring people into the country, how to fill up rooms, how to expand on experiences, which is all great. But if you're going to rethink tourism for the future, the problem that I see glaring at my face is the fact that the government body is far too divided. It's so divided that they, even if they have the good intention to do something, they cannot. And if they want to help other parties, they cannot. And how can we bring tourists into the country and then have a body that is unable to respond really fast if something were to happen? That's number one. And the other thing is, we're thinking about bringing people in and filling rooms, which is great. But how are we thinking about the consequences of that? Are we educating? Can the government educate the stakeholders on the far side of the island on how to manage this excessive tourism? I think, Mr. Harin, you mentioned something about airports, new airports that can come up. So that's great, right? But then what happens to the area around it? Are we monitoring and explaining to those people how to develop? I think these are real questions and answers that are needed for rethinking tourism going forward.
So I just want to add to that. Now, if you look at the Sri Lanka Tourism Board, now it's divided into 4 units. One is the Sri Lanka Promotion Bureau, SLTDA, that Prasad is the director of. And then you have the hotel school and then the Sri Lanka Convention Bureau. So it seems divided at this point of time. Isn't it important to have one body?
Not really, actually.
It's not?
Actually, before we were there, it was taken as one, but I actually believe that it is more focused now that it's under four chairmen, because it's more focused. It's more, I feel it's getting the job done more because there's 4 chairmen who are running it much in a very coordinated manner, because it's quite a big job to be done, because there's a mice market, which just imagine if one person is going to do all of that. It's not absolutely possible, because mice market is huge. Promotions is a different job. Policy making is another. And the hotel school is completely a different job.
But
How can one person run the hotel school, do the policy, which is not anything to do with the hotel school, and run the promotion, which is a global campaign, and then run the mice market, which is something completely separate.
The licensing.
And do the licensing. Yeah. I mean, it overlaps us. So I do not believe that is right. And I mean, it's just like you want to have the entire cake and do not let anybody else run it. So I don't believe it. I mean, it was structurally done for 4 people to run. I don't know how. I mean, I do not want to judge how it was run before.
So your role would have been much more easier when Diana Gamage was a state minister.
No, it would have been. Yeah. It would have been, but I didn't have.
You did not see eye to eye.
No. I wanted to give her the hotel school and another thing. She was highly critical about something, so I said if she doesn't want to work, my job was, I gave her 2 opportunities to run. She didn't want to take it. That's it. So then I said, up to her. If she doesn't want to take it and run, that was not my job. I wanted to answer your question. Yes. What you asked me was how we had to do it. I'll again say, I am also, when you have to lead certain jobs, sometimes when somebody doesn't support you, you have to take the control and run it. Private sector, in my departments, or what do you call these
authorities,
boards. You have to run with authority. These boards, sometimes the private sector also doesn't support you, unfortunately. I wanted to create an app which was completely run by a private sector, which had all the support system. There are SOS systems. If anybody had to complain, the complaints will be recorded, where all languages will be included. Anybody can register. Even if you wanted to create an app, you can support it and create it. You would just, all that you had to do was register yourself at SLTDA. The private sector didn't want us to do that. So sometimes the companies don't want.
Why? That's a good idea.
Exactly. I'm being very open. I'm being very open. So they didn't want you to do it, because let's say
you mentioned before some names of some private sector organizations. Now you can mention the names.
So what I'm just saying is, just like Booking.com, not Booking.com is an engine, but they take 18% of a booking. Right?
15 to 18%.
15 to 18%. Let's say 18%. So nobody gets a benefit out of it. So the certain companies and certain DMCs doesn't like that being charged. So a Sri Lankan company, if you do it, you will also charge for making a booking through their system. So they were reluctant that another Sri Lankan company will be taking charge through an app being created for giving the facilities also as well.
Yeah. We believe in traveling in digital age. So, for example,
certain companies didn't want to, and the board rejected this particular problem.
We are for digital. We are for digitalization. And today, if you buy a tourist can't buy a ticket online, it's very difficult. Either a train or any site that comes in, it's not available. If you go to London, it's a London pass. You get one pass and you go to all the places, special queue, all that is there. So it's not available for digital individual traveler, and that is a modern traveler that's coming in who's asking for that services. So digitalization and the digital impact is very important. Coming back just to your question about the high-end traveler, the right definition is that basically where we call purpose-driven tourism. Every country has a purpose in tourism. That's basically revenue. The number one, direct purpose. Indirect purposes are there. So it may not necessarily be paying $1,000 for accommodation. Bill Gates went to one of the countries last 6 months and went and stayed like a shepherd. It's called shepherd's experience.
Exactly like what Chanel said. Like
so those experience
like
based,
their
right?
experience.
Yeah.
So can that be catered in a way where?
So we need to create and market it, and then people would actually pay for those experiences.
Exactly.
It may not necessarily be. So the difference is the purpose-driven tourism. Not there is a bit of a misunderstanding when you say high-end. That is the case. And also in Sri Lanka, 60 or more than 60% of the accommodation below 3-star. So we can't ignore that. The other thing which comes in that sometimes the argument that comes in, the revenue that is coming to the informal sector, or at least the 3-star, 2-star guest houses, there is a backward integration. The community gets the benefit directly on that. That's the sort of argument that comes from both sides of it. And this side, of course, that gets a higher dollar. So we need to wait. And countries like Thailand, Sri Lanka, all those countries have this issue where we have the a large number of in the informal sector, and then there's a formal sector, and this is an ongoing thing that needs to be reached.
So, Prasad, we have a question for you from one of our viewers. We are an island nation with a beach around us. From Mount Lavinia to Fort, we have 9 5-star hotels. No one has a private beach. If a tourist wants to take a dip in the ocean, they have to take a 2.5-hour ride in an island that is unheard of. Uswata Kariyava is not even branded. Who wants to go there? Go there. The way it sounds. Why can't we open up the private beaches in Colombo for tourists and give them a 10-year lease?
It's like this. So let me answer this question. Not only the beaches, but I think if you look at the ocean area, we have 8 times larger ocean area than the land area. So we have not made use of it. I mean, as the minister said, we have closer to 150 shipwrecks. So there are different experiences, marine tourism related experiences that we can offer to the purpose-driven tourism, as Dilip rightly said. So these are the people who will pay for that experience, willing to pay that extra dollar for that. So what we have done over the last couple of months, we have looked at 2 key areas. One is developing the marine tourism sector. We have already got all the stakeholders, because we know SLTDA can do it, but that will be only a paper document which cannot be implemented. So what we have done, we have got all the relevant organizations, institutions, as well as private parties around the table. We have appointed a steering committee, and we have got the support of ADB with an international level consultant. She will be in the country from 2nd June. Working with the steering committee.
Not paying millions, no, Prasad?
We are not paying anything. ADB is paying.
Yeah.
So we don't have money to pay.
And also,
and coming back to the second product,
also about
Pico Trail, I was just going to tell that. We developed a 300-kilometer, 22-stage Pico Trail, which passes through 25 towns, 80 villages, 24 tea estates, and that is where the benefits will go to the community as well. Because sustainability of such products will depend on how much benefits we can divert to the community. And I think it's not an easy task, but we have already got the cabinet go-ahead also for that.
And also on the topic of innovation, Mr. Prasad, now Mr. Chandra brought up this concept of biodiversity travel. Now I think we are probably the only country in the world that can say that we have the largest land animal and the largest marine animal, the blue whale and the elephant. So what are you going to do, the minister and both of you can answer, how are we going to promote biodiversity tourism in Sri Lanka in a sustainable way? Not like what's happening at Yala right now, but in a sustainable way.
No, I think we are very clear. I think as somebody said at the start of this discussion, we need to ensure that every individual citizen of this country, directly or indirectly, is linked to tourism. So they need to understand their brand ambassadors of tourism.
All of us are.
But unfortunately, we don't realize that. I think the minister who said the tuk-tuk drivers and others are trying to make that extra quick money.
See, right? we were just starting to gazette 49 tourist zones in Sri Lanka. One of the reasons I wanted to do that was to educate the 49 zones, starting from schools even a Teka Day to Pettika Day, everyone to understand what their role of tourism was. So that even that Teka Day auntie would understand how to treat a tourist. So even, see, we do, most of the tourist area, they do. But from our childhood to understand how to treat them, you know. Most of the areas I feel they do, but it's just that when you go to Mirissa, when you go to Hirikatia, I feel the tourist is safe. I have seen people after being in the beach going at midnight, they're safe. But sometimes it's just that the how they react, maybe when they're drunk or too late nights. It's just that we need to educate them and constantly keep educating them. Like he said, it's just the whole concept that we have to. That's where the policy, where the SLTDA, we have to continuously make sure that it doesn't change. The governments could change, chairmans could change, but the policy has to remain. It has to be sustainable.
And also on that point, Minister, now there's one incident now, for example, in Kalpiti, or even when you go whale watching, when you see a pod of dolphins or a whale, all the boats just flock there.
Yeah.
And that it disturbs the animal, and even if it's a pod of dolphins, it could even harm the animal.
It destroys the product also.
Exactly, and it's a very bad impact on this. So
forget about getting into the beach, but to be honest, Disal, getting into the beach is a different story. Getting into the beach, the roads in the Kalpiti area is just horrendous.
So what can the Minister of Tourism do? Like, is it regulation, laws, or education? Like, what is your approach?
Again, it's education. It's not about regulation. It's about understanding. It's about, like she said, it's about loving that whole. People need to know. It's no point of putting regulation. You can't regulate it.
And
it's not about regulation.
They need to know why it's being, why it's important.
And I think that's where basically people like y'all come and.
But then again, we are speaking in English to a foreign audience, and we always try to communicate with the audience. And
that's why I say it's again identifying the zones, starting from school. Sometimes it's about the education. It's about what they do as a job. It's about for their living. But understanding the tourists and understanding the animals,
But even the infrastructure, getting onto this place. I went to Kalpiti last year. I honestly want to return back.
No, I think
because the roads were so bad.
Talking about Kalpiti, we are already doing the development master plan together with UDA. And once it's developed, I think we have already requested through the Minister and the Ministry that we need to appoint an interministerial committee where we will drive all the proposed developments.
I'm glad you all have something.
And also, it's already going on.
Also, President suggested there's a big complaint, and most of these areas don't have toilets for tourists. Especially Siege area, there's a huge complaint.
But not
maintained. What they're saying is they charge for a lot of money and it's not maintained. So what President said is it's not a government's job to maintain toilets. You can even if you do it. So what we suggested was for us to have a proper system where we give the management over to the hotels associations in that area. We build it, we hand it over so that they charge a small amount even, but the maintenance happens through the hotel. So we are now drafting. I've told the chairman to get it all arranged. So we are going to allocate some money this year for all these key areas, especially in Horton Plains. There's a huge problem there. There's no proper toilet, and there's another issue there is because now locals pay a different rate, but there's foreigners and the locals. How do you segregate locals' toilets and foreigners' toilets? So there's another practical problem of your faces. So we've been speaking with the chairman how to solve that.
Those are the mechanisms that has to be come from the ministry.
No, pass it on just for the minister. Give me a suggestion.
So Chandra, now I really want to pick your brain on this. There is no animosity or whatever it is bad there, but I just want to pick your brain on this now. City tourism is a key component. I'm not raising this issue up because Dilip is next to me, but I'm raising this issue up. You know why? Because recently when I was traveling from Dubai to Colombo, the entire business class of Emirates was full with individuals who were coming for a cruise in the Colombo port. They were staying in Sri Lanka for 2 to 3 days, and they were staying at a very popular hotel in Colombo. So you can't ignore. And these are high spenders, and I must tell you, I spoke to a few of them, and these are high spenders, and they were spending approximately around $180 to $220 per room. And why are we ignoring this situation?
No, I didn't say to ignore that.
Because you
I think since so many people have done huge, colossal investments in city, right, which is at a risk. For next 5 years, it's at a risk.
Now there's a big project that is going to be opened up next year.
They can handle it. No, they are.
No, you can't say that. No.
Come on.
How can you say that? Big company and then forget about
If I put a hotel, can you come and help me to fill the hotel? No. Right. If they have a plan, they are very intelligent people. They are the biggest conglomerates. They should handle it by themselves, right? Rather than going behind the government.
But there has to be an enabling environment, isn't it?
The environment, they have enough environment. They have got the loans, everything is there. So I'm coming into, rather than city tourism, I'm very worried about...
I won't talk about city tourism. We'll talk about your issue also in a bit.
Yeah.
But don't you think that enabling environment has to be there? Now, companies have invested their money. They want to have return on investment at the end of the day.
Its government is not responsible to get the return on the investment. Any industry in that case, right? Because this is a very shaky business. The city tourism is... Okay, some people have different kind of to do the city tours, right? Okay, they need Indian market, they need Chinese market, they need Australian market, but very few other people, we can't forget about this, right? So Indian market, they are doing the best to get the Indians to Colombo, right? That they are also part and parcel it, they are also supporting it. And you can't ask the government to lead it only that way.
But if we, for example, wanted to promote it on our own as individual creators, adding marketing, that's a possibility. But again, there's a problem that we face with the government, which is that if I want to fly our drone in Colombo and get these shots to really do a good video that's going to, there's so many obstacles in the way, even for somebody who's willing to take it off the government and off the private sector and do it on our...
you have Defense Ministry approval, it's a
Defense Ministry approval.
And not just that, like so many more.
Archaeological, like sometimes you can't film this railway because it belongs to something else. So even if people want to help, like you said, we can work harder to create that enabling environment because within the government is, I understood what you said, that you divided it into 4, and I understand how that works. I think it's very logical. But then how do you, say you want to do something and you need archaeological approval or you need wildlife. You can agree that there are problems even if you wanted to collaborate that you couldn't do it. How can we approach that problem?
No, correct. On that note, yes. I know first-hand experience because of Chandra's matter when this whole boat stories happened with Red Amazon. Yes, when it comes to tourism, when it comes to film tourism, we've experienced it. So that's where we try to get this single window approach, and we've actually gone ahead with our chairman, Mr. Priyanka Fernando, to find a solution. So I'm quite certain that very soon we'll be able to get you a positive answer on
and
that.
It's not a
Mr. Minister, may I come in?
Yes.
I think we propose an inter-ministerial committee to handle tourism. That is what we should have.
I spoke about
so that everyone can work together.
I think he's going to be done. He's heading it.
I'm on a committee on that, but we still haven't finalized it. But I'm pretty sure.
He said that he's even finding it difficult to put a cabinet paper.
No, I think that would mean that.
No, so you know why I was saying it, because when we put it to the president, he actually wanted to finalize whether there will be a new committee where nothing of this sort will be needed in the future. So I'm waiting for it.
Right. So I want to ask about a very contentious topic right now: legalizing prostitution in Sri Lanka. This is one of the biggest topics that are being spoken about. I saw Harini Amarsurya from the JVP, the NPP, speaking about it and the importance of legalizing it. I don't know the policy of the NPP as a whole, but looking at what Harini speaks, it speaks a little bit of volume. I want to pick Hareen's brain on this. What are your thoughts?
Well, to be honest, I've not thought about it personally. I have nothing against it, to be honest. But as Ministry of Tourism, we've not discussed about it at length because, again, as I said, that has not been one of the key topics we've been discussing.
But if you look at countries like Thailand, if you look at countries like France, there's red light districts, and they attract a significant amount of tourists as well. We shouldn't forget about it. I know it's a very contentious topic, but we need to talk about it.
That's not on our agenda right
so
now.
Dilip, I know next year one of your projects are going to be launched, the casino project. We all know that a few years ago, when Crown was trying to come to Sri Lanka, there was a lot of protest, and this is a time that you all launched your project as well, I remember. And this prostitution and casinos and all these were being discussed very heavily during this time. What is your take on this?
I mean, I can answer from a world trend, and some of the places that you mentioned are in the verge of closing it down. People have realized the values. There are certain values in tourism. So country which has a rich heritage, so much of biodiversity, so much of things to see, do we need to go down in that route? That's a question. I mean, I'm just posing that question around it. Tourism is not about selling everything. Tourism is about the values that we are appreciating for people to come and experience. So that we are talking about the modern age traveler, the new traveler. So the new travel is about sustainability. Sustainability is not only the environment, how you manage the entire cultural aspect as well. So I think we have, as a country, we have a lot more to market it. Rather than going down that route, which is very controversial, which is it's not going to do any good.
On that point, I'd like to ask Mr. Prasad, now actually the cultural issue comes up in many instances. Like for example, now me being from Kandy, there are a lot of obstacles when it comes to developing tourism in a cultural hub like that, because of the religious institutions or the notions between the people. So what is the right way to approach it? Like, do we compromise on one to bring up the other, or like how do we balance it out?
Actually, we are facing a lot of issues when it comes to clubs being open till 1 o'clock down south. I mean, already there are issues in having shows at Port City. Now that's the latest thing. Now they can't have it after 1 o'clock. So all the city hotels, which is now going to be the trend, where they are prohibiting it.
So nightlife is a key part of it. So
nightlife, and actually if you really look at it, in Colombo we don't have a single nightclub. What other nightclubs do we have in Sri Lanka? There is no proper nightclub in Colombo. Other than small lounge bars, there is no proper nightclub as such, categorized as a nightclub. There's no nightclub. So that's bad if you look at tourism. So if you really look at down south also, those are pubs, bars, that's played.
But they're doing quite well, isn't it? When you look at
it's a different kind of a concept that has been built, chill out clubs, which is good. It's very authentic, and which is quite nice to see. But the problem there is now it's a growing issue where they have issues among themselves. So one doesn't like the other having it. So initially it started well. They had Monday for him, not Tuesday for the other guy. So they separated the days. But now when things were going well, again there seems to be having an issue. So SLTDA is currently having quite a lot of issues with the cops. So now we've given them tourist zones and given them permission to have it till 1 o'clock.
You all have issues with the cops?
Well, cops are having issues with technically they can only have it till 10 o'clock. As per the law, they can only have it till 10 o'clock. So,
but they bend the rules once in a way.
Bend the rules, but then they'll have to pay. So that's the whole problem. So now we're trying to go to Supreme Court and bend the law.
So Dilip, one of the biggest issues with this economic crisis that we see is labor migration. We spoke this quite a bit on Face the Nation a couple of times, but I don't want to keep you away from that topic, because if you look at even your hotel chain, I see a lot of individuals have left the country, and that's a big issue. How do you view this?
So this will continue to be a problem even before this happened. There's skilled labor going out to Middle East areas, because Middle East actually currently developing
well also, no?
Yeah, 15,000 rooms, and also the new destinations are opening and giving visas like countries like New Zealand, Australia, especially for our chefs, etc. Canada. So this will continue to be a problem. One of the solutions that we can work out is employer branding. So we need to ensure that there are enough youth willing to join tourism, which is not the case today. Like, if you get a student, they would like to be accountant, a doctor, or engineer. So employer branding, where tourism is actually, I want to be part of that, world largest industry, is something which we can work out. And also the hotel school facility. So the government has one, I think private sector also need to come forward and create those hotel schools, create more people who can actually come to the industry and who can actually be part of it. So that would really help to build the numbers.
Minister, do you all have a plan on that? Because I see now next year they have one of a very big massive project that is going to be launched. So attracting good talent is a big problem.
One of the things that President intervened and said was, what we right now need is not a diploma or a degree program. What we really right now need is a 6-month quick crash course. Because that's what we realized. Lots of the students that we are enrolling wants to do the longer course, which is the three-year the degree program. But the degree program is not the need of the hour, because most of the people went when the crisis happened. Most of the people went into the Middle East, and we had a crunch. But currently, for me, what I felt is there was an opportunity for many people, and many people got in. So, what I saw was opportunity being created, and if they grabbed it, maybe it would have been a bit vulnerable at the start.
And also, like talking about migration now, with the Easter bombings and then the COVID wave and then the economic crisis, personally, even a lot of my friends who were in tourism, they removed themselves.
Correct.
A lot of people who were involved in tourism, they say that they're actually sick of it because they don't know when the next crisis is going to happen.
Happens again.
So, could you give a guarantee to the people, like, is this a good time to get back into tourism? Mr. Chandra, even you can weigh in on this. What do you say?
Of course, Chandra have been opening up a few hotels.
You
seem to be successful. So like, what's
our concepts are different, so I'm just changing the subject to a little bit from city tourism to wildlife. Right.
You hate city tourism.
I hate.
So on that point, Minister, like, what would you say?
I have hostels also in Colombo, you know that, right? In Kandy also, so we are also into city tourism, but different way, right? Okay, I'm talking about very important attraction which we are losing at the moment. We have lost already. Was the elephant gathering, which we got one night more in our cultural triangle area. So you know, the last 5 years, that means 1,225 days, we have lost 1,852 elephants. And so these, and humans, maybe human beings, about 620 human beings been killed, right? So this is a very dangerous situation, because elephant is attracting a lot of tourists. It's a symbol of almost Sri Lanka. So wild elephants, I think so we had at that time we had about 5,000 elephants. Now with these official figures, so last 5 years, the 2,000 is gone already. Out of 5,000, 3,000 is maybe remaining. That's why there are no gathering, not because of Moragaskanda. Right, Moragaskanda also one of the reasons that whole this thing is elephants have nothing to eat. They are getting into all the villages, and there will be more elephant will be killed because there are no proper EIB done. They are doing huge mega projects. But if we had the whole system like tanks, irrigation, cascade system, we wouldn't have this type of problem. But this is because of all mega projects. And also, sir, you are the land minister. I want to tell you also something, because I have been going to Wilpattu for maybe 10 years now, get the land. All the land, then I went to Galloy, of course I got land. We want to do something in Nakas, in Galaha, not Galabuttal area. But nothing is available. All the lands are either Balapatra, 2 years, and they are not doing anything. For agriculture, they are not even planted a papaya tree. Then, if not Jayabhumi or Swarnabhumi. All those things are given by the governments. Government officials, so they are the officials.
So, Chandra, have you taken this up before with the minister, and what has the minister's response been?
No, I have not spoken to him on the land matters yet, because
today you have.
No, today
now you have. Now you have.
He is very relaxed, and you all are very relaxed, and I am also very relaxed. I am not for the city tourism. I am talking about the land. So
we have to talk about it.
So we can't develop villages.
So let's ask the minister what his thoughts are.
No, so what we have now taken a decision was whatever lands that has not been cultivated or taken is going to be taken back to the government. That has been the decision that the president has taken. To be honest, he knows I have not given a single land so far after becoming.
Not even to me, yeah?
not even to anyone. So
you wish no.
No, so that has been the law by the president. So hopefully, what we can do is protect the land at the moment. And most of the lands that have been given was for people on political purposes, and most lands have not been cultivated. Nothing. And so
Right.
it's
So I want to wrap up, but I want to get everyone's thoughts on the way forward for Sri Lanka, because at the end of the day, there needs to be some sort of progressive discussion and how we should move forward. I want to end with Prasad and Minister on this subject.
Samir, can I have one more question
Yes.
just from Shehan?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, just in terms of like content, and we talked about the image of Sri Lanka going forward, because it's a critical thing for us, right? So when you type on YouTube, tourism in Sri Lanka, some of the top videos are people getting robbed by someone on the road, or they're being ripped off. So that is a very negative image. So as content creators, like, how do you battle this? Like, how do you organically, create content that actually shows the real Sri Lanka and attract tourists?
Yeah, so you need to incentivize positive messaging, right? So it's about that success rate. People see Sri Lanka amongst content creators. This could probably be a big market for us. Any foreigner knows that Sri Lanka and Philippines are the two best countries to come and grow your following. Why? Because Sri Lanka has people who speak in English. They will share every single piece of content you put. Even if you come with 1,000 followers, you're a foreigner, we will share, right?
And you end up with around 25,000, 100,000.
Lots of success
And that has
stories.
happened before. That has happened.
Much. We know so many of them. But the problem is, the model right now is incentivizing, I gave $500 to this poor man.
Yeah. She didn't want any money.
She didn't want any money. He tried to rob me, right?
Yeah.
Our people also are going and pushing this content. Now, at the same time, you will find one of our videos where we're promoting the positive aspect, right? But you don't have enough people that are focusing on promoting that positive.
So what can we do? Like, should we get more content creators from Sri Lanka to come in? Or?
Definitely. This is one thing we...
And how do we
Yeah, so definitely what has to be done is from the tourist board side, the development authority, they need to establish more local creators to set the trends, right? Now, one thing we've learned is when we go and talk about a property, a destination, right? We share a bit more local insight. There'll be 10, 15, 20 foreign YouTubers who come and listen to what we are doing and then reach that out to far more people. But right now, honestly speaking, we are the only people who are doing it in English out of Sri Lanka as independent.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
And we've understood in this conversation that it's obviously very hard to get government and private sector to come together and promote a thing. Right? I think that's...
No, but all of them are friends.
No, we could all be friends, but at the end of the day,
also
what gets
creators
done?
need to be in the conversation.
So Shahan, just want to ask Chanel, and then I want to open the floor for the way forward. Chanel, 2019, your first visit was to Thailand, and then you come back to Sri Lanka. Why?
Our first visit was in 2017, and I think we initially planned to be international content creators. We wanted to travel the world, and we were like any other Sri Lankan kids, we grew up in the city, but we are Sri Lankan, is what we thought. Until this guy, Canadian guy who in Thailand was just like, so where are you from? I said, I'm from Sri Lanka. And he said, you're from paradise and you're here in Thailand for what? And that really made me understand that I need to first travel and see the country for myself. How can I be traveling the world before I know what my backyard looks like? And that's really what instigated the
and
journey.
the opportunity that came along with it.
Yeah, and of course
and
the
as
timing.
You say, Sri Lankans are amazing. They
definitely
the hospitality. You can speak to them, you can ask for help, and they'll be at their disposal.
And that's another reason why experiential tourism would work great here, is because the people are so nice. And for experiential tourism, you interact with people a lot.
So Chandra, let's start off with you. You started off the discussion today. We want to start off the final round with you. I'll give you around 1.5 minutes. Don't take too much of time. Don't talk about city tourism, but let's talk about the way forward. If you have to tell the minister a message, what would that message be? You could be critical. The minister is laughing.
Why do you want everybody to be critical?
So you could be critical if you want to. If you don't want to be critical, that's okay.
Journalists are very critical.
Yeah, critical always.
What would journalists do about tourism?
I will tell you after.
I'll tell you after that. Go on. Let me talk about it. So I think first, we have two things here. Product development on tourism. Right?
Correct.
So that's a big subject. maybe his product or my product or homestay, all this product development is very important. Then proper promotions, understand the market. These two has to go hand in glove, and we have to work towards that. I think we have budgets, we have all, and even the product development, when you come to the product development, we need to support them. All these villagers who have homestays, they are creating also. We have clients who are staying in, staying in first boutique hotels. One hotel is a homestay. Experience. Very rich people. In Kandy, we have 2-3 guys who are in super homestays. So likewise, product development is very important. We have to support them. We have to you have been all over the world. Even the Tekade, you can give them some sort of hints.
It's a great experience for a tourist.
Right. So this is very important. We can't have only the very big tea rooms in Colombo and all posh ones. But that is very important. Mud huts are more important sometimes. You pay when you go to Maldives. If you go to just a touch place, it's more expensive than a concrete place.
Yeah.
So this is some people like it, some people don't like it. So I think product development and promotions also, it should be a correct time to do the promotion. If the country is not very stable in politically, or if there are everyday problems, and if you report about drug dealers every day, Kudi Salindu, this Salindu, Angoda Lokka, all this in 15 minutes in our media institutions, right? So we have no time when we have a tourist group or whatever, nobody is talking about it, who are bringing dollars. So these are the things, even the media should support us on this. It's very important.
That is why we are having a dialogue like this today. When there are issues
that is not enough. That is not enough. But
no, we'll try our
best. Give more airtime for us.
Of course, Shashank.
More airtime for us.
If you would have noticed, 3 weeks ago we spoke about tourism. We're speaking about tourism again today. We had individuals in the caliber of Dilip Munadania then. We are having him today as well. Because we want to have a dialogue. We want to promote Sri Lanka. And as I said before, we're all ambassadors.
I think your company also has invested in hotels. We are using them.
Yes, of course. So that is why it's very important to talk about
it's very important.
So let's now listen to Chanel and Tahir together. What do you think the way forward? If you have to tell the minister a message, what would that message be?
I think my message would really be not to the minister, but to our public, our stakeholders. Both of us, our success the last 4 years has been purely catering to the, don't take this the wrong way, but the inefficiency of our government, the lack of the gap created as a result of not having proper marketing on social media, right? There are these opportunities right throughout. And while the government and the private sector, as we can see, there is a lot to discuss, there is a lot to happen. It will most probably take some time, and we don't necessarily know if we will absolutely get it there. But as the people, we have met so many people. There are so many passionate, driven, hardworking people here. They just need to learn and realize that they can do this by themselves. Yes, tourism, the SLTDA, all of them need to be the guiding points to make sure we're going down the right path. But I think that we as stakeholders, if all these small hotels, not the big hotels, not the conglomerates that need someone to sign on, the smaller guys, take that initiative, create the thing you want. You want social media, do it, invest it in yourself. There is that opportunity, and I think while we wait on a bigger system to fall in place and support us structurally, the immediate is that we have to take matters into our own hands, and we all have to play our own part in promoting our service or our destination.
I think people don't like to accept that there's a certain level of change we as citizens need to take in. It's a very controversial thing, because the moment you say that, everyone likes to point at the inefficiencies of the government, and there are inefficiencies. But how much longer, how many more generations are we going to watch and complain about it before we understand that who selects the government and puts them there? It's us, the people. So perhaps we also need to reflect and think about what kind of people are we selecting.
Hold them accountable.
Hold them accountable. And of course, we need to understand that if we also need to be aiming to be good citizens, right? And a good citizen means doing as much as you can in your ability, or to sit back and complain until, waiting for somebody else. And I'm not giving the citizens all of the responsibility, but I do believe that it's important that we as people also understand that there's a level where you come, where you have to draw the line and say, okay, now I'm going to do what needs to be done in my capacity. There's a lot that and I just think the power of that, if everyone does what can be done in their capacity with a can-do mindset and an attitude, I know I'm going to get heat for this, we can achieve leaps and bounds by just ourselves, you know.
So, Prasad, what are your thoughts? After you, I'm going to switch to
I think let me conclude because I think it's very important for us to understand the responsibility of each and every citizen of this country. And I think media do have a bigger role to play there because whenever a rape case or something negative happens, it goes around in no time. But today, if you speak to 100 tourists leaving the country, I'm sure 90% of them will talk good of Sri Lanka. But we don't actually market that. And also, having said that, in certain areas, the state sector bureaucracy or red tape, whatever you may call it, it's how we view it from outside, but it's the system that is holding back. So I think the government needs to seriously look at finding solutions, I think, which they are doing right now. Finding a way, clearing this, so that the officials will have the liberty to take decisions. They need to be held responsible and accountable. So I think that's very important. And going forward, the country will have to look at offering the different experiences, not merely accommodation facilities, but more into blending all the resources we have. I mean, this country, we have everything other than snow. You can offer anything. You call it either a walking trail, hiking trail, waterfall experience, wellness tourism, sports tourism. So all these are there, but only thing is we have not converted that into a really international standard product. And also we have so many stories now. If you go to a country like Australia, they will take you and show something and create a beautiful story, but ultimately what you see is nothing with whatever you can see in this country. But we need to work around creating stories linked to all our attractions. So basically it's all about developing the lesser known attractions. I think SLTDA has identified closer to 5,000 lesser known attractions. We don't have to develop all 5,000. If we can concentrate at least on about 50 to 100 in the next couple of years and get wherever assistance is needed, develop them into really world-class experiences, I think we will do very well in tourism, attracting the purpose-driven tourists to this country.
Thank you very much, Prasad. Dilip.
Yeah, I think I established the gap that we looked at it. So the gap has to be, I think, addressed in two ways. One is having a robust, continuous, and a consistent marketing plan. The marketing plan should have basically your address segmentation, targeting, and positioning. And as well as you should basically look at travel agents, tour operators, consumer, and journalists, all four segments. And also to use media like advertising, PR, digital marketing, international signature events, and so on to be included into that, so that's a consistent plan coming in. It's very important that we have this on a continuous basis year on year, because it will take a little longer time in order to establish an equity, create the brand equity in you. It won't happen overnight. It needs to be 2, 3, 4 years campaign that will build. So that's the marketing side of it. And also to move away from the traditional, the statistics shows that we continue to be sea, sand, and sun destination. So in order to move and everything that we mentioned here, it needs to be a clear push to go to that, and the marketing will help us to position Sri Lanka into that, moving away from that traditional sea, sun, and sand image. The second one is basically also to bring new elements like music tourism, wellness market, wedding and conference, my segments, also to be promoted, and adventure tourism, we looked at it, and so that it brings a certain diversification on the market segments. That's the marketing side of it. In order to execute this, maybe a robust institutional framework, actually having right people, skilled people to bring them in. A lot of difficulties in attracting right people into the state organizations, especially with the salaries that needs to be paid. Because if you look at any other organizations, they get the best talent from the world and executing certain things. So we know those constraints are there, so that needs to be addressed. The plans have to be executed in that manner. In terms of the product development, again, maybe have a scheme to give them some assistance to new product development or experiential development, so that these people can actually come forward and create those new experiences for tourists to coming in. And also in terms of the new age travel and the sustainability components are very, very critical moving forward. UNWTO has given a framework for that, and we call 6-point framework. They're looking at in any destination development plan, product development plan, to look into public health, social inclusion, and biodiversity conservation, climate action, circular economy, and governance and finance. Why finance is every 10 years you have something in tourism, you need to ensure that consistency is there. So that's a very good, robust framework UNWTO has given in terms of destination planning, product planning framework. So if you have those things in place, I think Sri Lanka is by nature should be able to get that.
Thank you very much, Dilip. I now move my attention to the Minister himself, the Minister of Tourism, Harin Fernando.
I think Sri Lanka is just a brilliant product. There are things that Sri Lanka will do simple for now. As I again said, Emirates and Qatar Airways has just opened up 5 flights a day. That's alone is going to bring us a massive amount of passengers into Sri Lanka. So Qatar Airways having 5 flights a day means at least 1,500 passengers coming into the country, 300 passengers coming into the country. From that alone, you'll have at least 60% of the flight being tourists. Will mean at least about my maths. Okay, let me not go there. I'll be criticized for that as well next day. So fair number, at least about 600, 700 tourists will be coming into the country from Qatar Airways alone. So looking at that, I think that's quite positive. And those are airlines which will get us all the European, Russian travel market coming into Sri Lanka, a little bit of high end. So I think that's a start that we need to have for Sri Lanka. Looking at that, I think, again, adding the value additions, adding the adventure, like they said, adding the digital creation, we can start all over again. What Dilip said is the bigger picture. What my job is going to be, the constraints are there, adding the numbers, adding the professionalism, getting the bigger salaried people. That's not there right now. That's stage 2. So all that will fall into place when the country is at the right track. Right now we can't afford it. We are not. We are a country that is restructuring. We are in a process that we can't find the top people. And a politician's job is facilitating. It's not the job. I am not the professional. I am a person who is going to be getting the professional to do the job and facilitating. They are the guys who are going to do the job. So I understand my role is to make sure that I get people to run the show. If he's a professional, they are the professional, get them to do the job. And if I'm going to do the job, I'm going to really mess it up. And that's not a politician's job role to do. So I need to make sure I get him as a director who is a professional at SLTD to do a job. And if I think I know the job, I'm going to fail. It's on my job. So I need to make sure that I know all of these people to get the job, and I'm going to make sure that I get you to do the job. Which is your job is to do, communicate and make sure people know that we are a country who are an island nation who need to treat the tourists very well and get the dollars into the country. So if that happens, Sri Lanka will be an ideal destination.
We've learned the hard lesson from Gotabaya Rajapaksa, haven't we? Unfortunately.
Well, we made sure that he went home and we got into the country and I became the tourist minister.
One more thing I just want to mention that the role of national carriers, Sri Lankan Airlines, who has played in terms of bringing tourism, as well as the moving forward is very, very critical. And they have actually had I think all of us, they have done a tremendous work in the past. Yeah.
Harin, you accepted a ministerial portfolio during Gotabaya Rajapaksa's time, if you forgot.
Well, we made sure he went home too.
But it's important.
It's part and parcel of the game.
But memory serves us right. You asked Chandra, what journalists do, we have a good memory. You spoke about 300 tourists, 60% out of it is 180, Harin.
You said 300 into 5 is 1,500. 1,500 digging macam 60%, 900. Hari, ඒක මන් දෙකට බැද්දා. Emirates The 3,000.
No, but you said you're not good in maths, so I thought I'll help you out there. But very quickly, Harin.
Credit pass for maths in O-levels.
But Harin, I need to ask you this question. Why? Because today you are here. I know this is not related to the subject, but it's a political question. I don't want to leave you tonight without asking that political question. Yes. How is the government really doing right now? Because today was a decisive vote against the Public Utilities Commission chairman as well. He was voted out from the chairmanship.
You had to ask me that.
No, I have to ask you this. If you don't want to answer, it's okay. You can duck that question, and we can wrap it up from there. Yeah, please. How are you doing politically right now?
What do you mean?
Politically as a government. Now they're talking about a presidential election. We saw 2 members of the SJB crossing over to the UNP as well. They say you are behind all this. I don't know the truth behind it. But to tell me, to praise us, make us cognizant about what's going on.
No, see, it's politics end of the day. And I believe President is in a very strong position. I believe the country needs a presidential election. I don't think local government election is a right way forward. And I believe, as I said, President has some good plans. Again, all in all, I say there was an opportunity. If an opposition wanted to take power, they could have taken power. And I was a forefront person who was on the forefront. I wanted change. It didn't happen. So President is actually doing a good job. And I believe right now it's not about politics, it's about stabilization.
Removing Janak Ratnayake as a Public Utilities Commission chairman?
See, at that particular moment, I think he was doing politics. He's also talking about politics. So it's a decision that President and the minister had to take, and I think they did that. So it's a government decision. I think he had to abide by that. So I believe they did the right thing. He had to be he had to be removed through a parliament.
Is there a cabinet reshuffle? Because you said Vadivel Suresh is going to be
it's not going to be a cabinet reshuffle, but there may be some ministerial portfolios. But
any date?
Maybe in a couple of months, a couple of weeks.
Presidential election when?
In about 13 months, 14 months.
Next year?
Next year.
Let's all hope that we are in a resplendent island nation by then. Thank you very much, Chandra Wickramasinghe, Harin Fernando, Minister of Tourism, Prasad Jayasuriya, Director of Tourism Planning, SLTDA, Chanel Rodrigo and Shehan Tahir, thank you very much for joining us this evening. And Dilip, thank you very much for joining us this evening on the show. I know all of you have demanding schedules, and to have all of you on the show tonight was indeed a pleasure. Thank you very much, Nisal, for your thoughts as well. I leave you tonight with a quote, as I always do. The journey is the destination. We are all ambassadors of tourism. When it comes to Sri Lanka, we want Sri Lanka to do well. We want Sri Lanka to attract tourism and make sure that if you have not visited Sri Lanka yet, this is opening our arms wide open and inviting you to come to Sri Lanka and enjoy our hospitality, take a dip in our resplendent beaches, and you would understand what Sri Lanka is all about. Take care and good night.